one held by the Faculty of Social and Political Sciences.
For me,
Welcome to the second Sunan Ampel International Conference on Political Social Science 2000.
Kind of the conference is kind of
Professor Dr. Abdul Qadir MAG,
the Vice Dean of Academic and Institutional Affairs, Dr. Eva Yulianti Umdatul Izzah SOS, MSE,
the Vice Dean of General Administration, Planning and Financial Affairs, Dr. Ani Nurhayati MSE,
the Vice Dean of Cooperation and Student Affairs, Dr. Muhammad Syaiful Bahar SAG MSE, the Head of the Department and Secretary of Political Sciences, Sociology and International Relations.
and last but not least, to all lecturers, managerial staff, and all participants.
Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to welcome our invited speakers, Dr. Jaap de Ruiter from Tilburg University, the Netherlands.
Professor Linan Jia, Ph.D. from Beijing Foreign Studies University, China.
Azmil Muhammad Tayyib, Ph.D. from University Science, Malaysia.
Professor Dr. Abdul Qadir MAG from UINSA Ampel, Surabaya, Indonesia. Dear Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, let's begin our session today by reciting Basmalah.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor. My name is Nadia Devina, and this is my partner
I'm Muhammad Raditya.
as the Master of Ceremony in this event.
Ladies and gentlemen, as a sense of love for our country and campus, UINSA Ampel, Surabaya, let us sing the national anthem Indonesia Raya, followed by the hymn song of UINSA Ampel, Surabaya. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand up.
Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, and participants, our next agenda is an opening speech from the head of SAICOPSS 2023 and Vice Dean of General Administration and Financial Affairs of the Faculty of Social and Political Sciences, UIN Sunan Ampel, Surabaya. Dr. Anik Nurhayati, MSE, the time is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bismillah, alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Amma ba'du. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The Honorable Rector of UIN Sunan Ampel, Surabaya, Professor Muzaki, MAG, Grade Dipsi, MPhil, Ph.D. The Honorable Vice Rector, Professor Dr. Ali Mudhafir, MAG, the Honorable Dean of Political and Social Sciences Faculty, UIN Sunan Ampel, Surabaya, Professor Dr. Abdul Khalik, MAG. I would like to extend my warm greetings to the speakers of SAICOPSS, Assistant Professor Linan Jia, Ph.D., Dr. Jaap de Ruiter, Asmil Tayyib, Ph.D., and Professor Dr. Abdul Khalik, MAG. I would like to acknowledge the presence of the Vice Dean for Institutional and Academic Affairs, the Vice Dean for Cooperation and Students, and the dedicated lecturers in the Faculty of Political and Social Sciences, distinguished guests, and our esteemed students. With gratitude for presence of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, we delighted to host at the third SAICOPSS with the theme Social and Political Transformation in the Digital Era, Prospect for Humanity, and its 12 sub-themes. SAICOPSS is an annual conference in our faculty that made its debut in 2021 during the pandemic under the leadership of Professor Muzaki as the Dean and now our respected Rector. The meticulous planning of the conference began at the start of the year, involving discussion on the theme. 3 months ago, we initiated the socialization of the theme and sub-themes, inviting our distinguished speakers and presenters. Over the next 2 days, we are honored to feature our Vice Rector, Institutional and Academic Affairs as the welcoming speech, and 4 outstanding speakers in the plenary session. In addition, there will be 34 presenters in 6 parallel sessions. The proceedings of this conference will be compiled into an ISBN publication. Furthermore, 8 best proceedings will be awarded by the committee, including monetary recognition and publication in our faculty journal. As we look ahead, our aspiration is to achieve index status of this conference, enhancing its academic significance and allowing us to better acknowledge the contribution of our presenters. We will also announce SAICOPSS 2024, which will be held in our campus offline, inshallah. In this occasion, I would like to thank to all the hardworking committee, FISIP management, moderator, MC, and all supporting team whom I couldn't mention individually. In conclusion, on behalf of the leadership in faculty and the entire committee, I wish you a fruitful conference and enjoyable. We sincerely hope that this event runs smoothly, successfully, and contribute to the continued development of social and political sciences. Should there be any shortcoming, we extend our apologies in advance. Thank you very much and enjoy conference. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're moving to the next agenda is the welcoming speech from the Vice Rector of the Institutional Affairs to Professor Dr. Ali Mudofir M.A.G. The time is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, you all, ladies and gentlemen. Alhamdulillah, syukurillah, wa la hawla wa la quwata illa billah wa ba'du. Al-muhtaramin, jami'u al-bahisin wal muqaddimin fi hadhin nadwah al-alamiyah. Naqulu syukran nahwa hudurikum jami'an. La siyama al-awwal Dr. Jaap de Ruiter from Tilburg University. Athani Sayyidah Linan Jia, Ph.D. from Beijing University. Welcome for you. Asalis Said Azmil Muhammad Tayyib, Ph.D. from University Sains Malaysia. Ahlan bikum Ustaz. Sabah al-khair. Ar-Rabi' Profesor Abdul Khaliq min Jami'ah Sunan Ampel Al-Islamiyah di Surabaya. Nahmadullaha ala hadhin ni'mah wa hadzal yawm bi as-sihah hatta nastati an nahdura ila hadhin nadwah ad-duwaliyah allati aqadatha kulliyah ulum al-ijtima'iyyah wa siyasiyah fi hadhil kulliyah FISIP faculty at UINSA Surabaya. Yasurruni iqadu hadhihi nadwah al-alamiyah lima anna hadzal bahas fi hadhihi nadwah al-alamiyah min mawdu'in hamin. Na'ni al-mawdu' an mustaqbaliyatul insaniyah fil alam fi asril aulama or digital era now. Nahnu qad wasalna qad dakhalna ila asrin jadid fi hadzal alam. Fa hiya alam ar-raqmi fi hadzal alam. Wa Jami'ah Sunan Ampel al-Islamiyah al-Hukumiyah di Surabaya al-masyhur bi UINSA Surabaya. Hadi ihdal jami'at al-Islamiyah al-mawjudah fi Surabaya min jami'at asy-syahirah wal fa'iqah. Nash'uru bihammati huduri hadhihi an-nadwa al-alamiyah. Lianna wujud al-insan wa kaunul insaniyah al-an na'ni fil alam fil asril aulama hunaka tahaddiyat katsirah bihuduri hadhihi al-aulama wa hadhihi al-asr ar-raqmi digital era. Nahnu nash'ur bitahaddiyat al-katsirah nuhaddi nahwa kaunina al-insan fil alam. Fa syukran ala kulliyati kulliyatil istima'i ulum al-istima'iyyah wa siyasiyah fi hadhil jami'ah ila al-amid wa ila naibil amid wa kadzalika ila jami'i al-muqaddimin wal bahithin fi hadhin nadwah. Fa asallahu ay yu'tiyana as-sihhah wal afiyah hatta nantahiya ila hadhin nadwah wa nujidu al-khulasu al-hamah listimrari kaunina al-insaniyah fil alam. Fasyukran lakum. Wasawahal khair. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
This is distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. To make this event run smoothly with a blessing from Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, let's reciting Al-Fatihah. Al-Fatihah. Amin, amin, ya Rabbal Alamin.
Ladies and gentlemen, before we enter our main event, we would like to inform you that today we will be having two plenary sessions.
After the first plenary session, there will be two parallel sessions that contain of 2 field tour rooms. And after break, we will have the second parallel session with 1 field tour rooms.
Dear Excellency, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we've arrived at the main event, the first plenary session with our invited speaker of day 1, Linan Jia, Ph.D. from Beijing Foreign Studies University, China, entitled Social and Political Transformation in the Digital Era Prospect of Humanity. Ladies and gentlemen, this session will be moderated by Ajeng Dia Prakasita MA. Mrs. Ajeng, the time is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Assalatu wassalamu ala asrofil anbiya'i wal mursalin. Sayyidina wa maulana Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in, amma ba'du. First of all, I would like to say thank you for the committee that already invited me as the moderator today. And I would like to say the Honorable Dean of the Faculty of Social and Political Science, Professor Dr. Abdul Khalik M.Ag, and the Vice Dean of Academic and Institutional Affairs, Dr. Ifa Yulianti Umdatul Izzah SOS MSE, and the Vice Dean of Administration, Planning, and Financial Affairs, Ibu Dr. Ani Nurhayati MSE, and the Vice Dean of Cooperation and Student Affairs, Bapak Dr. Haji Saiful Bahar MSE. And also, I would like to say thank you for all the participants that already joined with us in SAICOPSS 2023. And I would like to say hello to our great speaker today, Ibu Linan Jia. How are you?
I'm good.
Okay,
Thank you.
Welcome with us in our SAICOPSS 2023. Ibu Linan Jia, this is our third international conference that already held. And this session, or in this event, in 2023, it's our hybrid session. So we are here for the presenter and also some the speaker also from online, something like that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to read first or give the brief information about Ibu Linan Jia curriculum vitae. Well, Ibu Linan Jia is an assistant professor. Sorry. Okay, Ibu Linan Jia is an assistant professor in the School of International Relations and Diplomacy at Beijing Foreign Studies University, and she received a Ph.D. in political science from the University of Georgia in 2022. And her research concerns about comparative institutions, political behavior, and public opinion.
specifically examine how the evolution of institutions in authoritarian contexts influences the adaptability and resilience of such regimes. And her work stresses the importance of focusing on dynamic processes rather than making static assumptions about political agents in authoritarian settings. She has also had publication about the research in the China Quarterly, Journal of Chinese Governance, Palgrave Handbook of Local Governance in Contemporary China, and Routledge Handbook of Chinese Discourse Analysis, among other outlets. Well, that's a very great professor. Okay, after this, I will give several information for the Ibu Linan show. So you will have around 45 minutes to present the paper or your presentation. And after that, we will open the discussion with our participant. And without any further, I would like to give the time for Ibu Linan Jia to present her paper about social and political transformation in the digital era, prospect for humanity.
Thank you. I think my presentation will probably not run for 45 minutes, but I'll try to pace it to better fit the schedule. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is both an honor and a profound responsibility to address this distinguished group at the third Sunan Ampel International Conference of Politics and Social Science in Indonesia. The theme of our discussion, social and political transformation in the digital era, prospect for humanity, is not only timely, but also imperative in the understanding of our current global dynamics. So in an era where digital technology has become the linchpin of social interaction and political engagement, we're witnesses to a transformation of unprecedented scale and speed. The digital revolution has afforded humanity the tools to broaden participation, enhance transparency, and foster. Sorry, everything okay? Yeah. All right. And bolster the accountability of political systems. However, these tools are not without their double edges, right? They also pose challenges and vulnerabilities, ranging from misinformation to the digital divide that can threaten the fabric of our societies. So I will briefly talk about my broad understanding of the Indonesia and ASEAN case, and then move on to talk more about the case of the Chinese digital transformation. So Southeast Asian countries, particularly in Indonesia, stand at the forefront of this digital transformation. Indonesia, with its rich history of navigating the confluence of diverse cultures, religions, and ideologies, offers a very unique perspective on the harmonization of traditional social values with the demands of digital modernization. The nation's leap in digital connectivity have spurred economic growth, political participation, and social innovation, setting a benchmark for the Southeast Asian region. For instance, Indonesia's digital economy is rapidly growing and includes sectors such as e-commerce, financial technology, and digital media. The country has a very large population and a growing middle class, which provides a vast market for digital services. The government has introduced various policies and initiatives to support the growth of the digital economy, including tax incentives for startups and the investments in digital infrastructure. Despite challenges such as internet penetration and digital literacy, the potential for growth in Indonesia's digital economy is very significant. Indonesia has produced its own multi-billion-dollar tech platforms and numerous tech startups. It has one of the fastest growing e-commerce markets in the world, on track to reach around $360 billion in value by 2030. By one estimate, Indonesia ranks 6th in the world in terms of the number of startups, with about 2,500 in 2023. And Indonesia has also used digitalization to accelerate inclusive development, reaching the poor with better targeted social assistance and financial services. This growth trajectory not only showcases economic prospects, but also has profound implications for political and social landscapes. Further, according to a study by the Journal of Southeast Asian Affairs, social media played a very significant role in Indonesia's 2019 presidential election. The use of platforms like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter allowed candidates to connect with voters, spread their message, and mobilize support. Many have used social media for campaign advertising and to rally supporters through events and rallies. However, there were also concerns about misinformation and the manipulation of social media during the election. And because of that, the Indonesian parliament passed a law to regulate the use of social media during political campaigns to prevent such misuse of technology from happening again in the future. So basically, the result was a more engaged and informed citizenry, although one that must navigate the complexities of digital literacy and the pitfalls of online echo chambers. However, amidst this optimistic embrace of the digital realm, it is crucial for us to address the potential risks of digital technology with equal rigor. The rise of fake news, online radicalization, and cyber intrusions calls for resilient and proactive attitude. Southeast Asian nations are therefore tasked with the dual mandate of leveraging digital tools for the betterment of the society while safeguarding against these emergent threats. Indonesia's Pancasila, the foundational philosophy theory of the state, emphasizing unity in diversity, undergirds its approach to these challenges. The principle could serve as a model for digital governance that promotes inclusive development and counters divisive forces. As a region, Southeast Asia's diversity in political systems, economic stages, and social structures offers us a very fertile ground for comparative research and collaborative strategies in the digital era. The ASEAN Digital Integration Framework Action Plan is one such collaborative effort that underscores the importance of digital innovation for economic and social transformation in the region. The action plan is a detailed strategy outlining specific steps that member states of ASEAN must take to achieve the goals of digital transformation, innovation, and entrepreneurship. The plan covers several areas, including digital infrastructure, human capital development, e-commerce, and cybersecurity. It is expected to help ASEAN countries to capitalize on the opportunities presented by the digital era and enhance their overall competitiveness in the global marketplace. Now, let us also consider the case of China, a nation that has undergone a remarkable digital transformation, influencing both its internal dynamics and its role on the global stage. China's journey provides a unique lens through which we can examine the interplay between digital technology and political governance. First, I want to talk about social media and public discourse in China. So social media in China, despite operating under a somewhat different set of norms and regulations compared to the West, has significantly influenced public discourse. Platforms like WeChat and Sina Weibo have transformed into arenas for public discussion and civic engagement. According to researchers, these platforms have facilitated a moderated yet vibrant form of public discussion, where citizens discuss a range of topics from social issues to local governance. However, it is crucial to note the role of state monitoring and guidance in shaping these discussions. In reflecting upon the dynamic interplay between digital technology and public discourse, we must acknowledge the profound influence of social media in shaping political and civic engagement. The example of the Chinese online forum Qiangguo Luntan, for example, vividly illustrates this point. Here, a myriad of political topics are not just discussed, but intensely debated by a diverse group of subscribers of the platform. From corruption and territorial disputes to healthcare reform and environmental protection, these discussions are emblematic of a larger phenomenon, which is the empowerment of ordinary citizens in the digital age. Through platforms like this, individuals find a voice, find an audience, and an arena for debate, significantly contributing to the richness of public discourse. But the impact of social media extends further. It fundamentally alters the information ecosystem in which citizens operate. So for those people who engage with these platforms, they often encounter a wider array of political views and information, leading to deeper involvement in public debates, both online and in the tangible world. The rapid spread of information on these platforms, coupled with the challenges they pose to traditional models of information management, makes social media a very powerful conduit for expressing concerns and shaping opinions. And this is not merely a technological evolution, it is also a social transformation. Social media's facilitation of public discourse and political engagement transcends the digital boundaries, permeating the very fabric of our modern societies. It reshapes how citizens interact with each other and with their governments, how they articulate their concerns, and how they mobilize for change. In understanding this digital transformation, we can grasp a clear picture of the evolving nature of political behavior and institutional response to our time. Therefore, as we consider the future of social and political transformation in this digital age, let us not underestimate the power of digital platforms in shaping the narratives and contours of public discourse. Their influence is a testament to the growing intersection between technology and human agency in the quest for a more engaged and informed society. Second, I want to talk about the digital era, which also has significant influence on government-citizen relationships in China. So the digital era has redefined the relationship between the Chinese government and its citizens. The government employs the digital tools for public service delivery, surveillance, and social management. As noted by some China observers, China's approach to digital governance is characterized by its cyber-Leninism, where technology is used to enhance state power while simultaneously driving economic modernization. In our examination of digital transformation in political systems, the concept of cyber-Leninism in China provides a compelling case study. The Chinese government's approach to manage the internet and digital technology reflects a sophisticated blend of management and innovation. By merging different bureaucracies responsible for propaganda, technological development, and security, China has crafted a unique model to extend state influence in the cyber realm. A key element in this strategy is the plan for informatization, which seeks to embed information and communication technologies into every aspect of society. This initiative serves a dual purpose. It promotes efficiency and enhances service delivery while simultaneously enabling the monitoring and shaping of public opinion. So a notable manifestation of this strategy is the requirement for real name registration for online services and mobile subscriptions. This policy facilitates the extensive collection and analysis of user data, augmenting the government's ability to monitor its citizens. The state has further escalated its surveillance capabilities through widespread camera monitoring and on-the-ground oversight. Additionally, the internet in China has become a tool for tightening monitoring over local officials. It compels them to be transparent, not just to their constituents, but also to central authorities. For example, the development and utilization of online platforms for reporting corruption directly to higher levels of government is a significant departure from the traditional method of petitioning in person when it comes to corruption cases. The Chinese model of cyber-Leninism offers us a multifaceted view of how a state can wield digital technology as an instrument of governance and management. It underscores the complex interplay between technological innovation, political authority, and societal oversight in the digital era. Third, I will talk about AI and big data in governance and policy in the Chinese context. So in terms of governance, China's leap into AI and big data is reshaping its approach. The government's use of these technologies for social governance exemplifies a new model where big data is a tool for both governance and decision-making. In our discussion on digital transformation and its global impact, we must critically examine the evolving nature of international value and supply chains in the digital era. A significant concern here is the potential threat to those highly integrated and globalized chains as major global players increasingly seek to develop indigenous capabilities and reduce interdependence. This trend could lead to what some analysts describe as the feudalization of internet. We are facing a scenario where countries, businesses, and consumers may have to navigate a bifurcated technological world, choosing between Chinese and Western infrastructure, gadgets, and technologies. Such a divide presents not just technological challenges, but also profound implications for international relations and global economic structures. Furthermore, it is crucial for decision makers not to take for granted the existing geopolitical alignments, such as the US-Europe axis. The dynamics in the digital realm are fluid and complex, and the alliances that seem natural and steadfast today may need to be reevaluated in the face of emerging digital realities. In this context, the Digital Silk Road initiative by China warrants a closer look. While the Digital Silk Road ambitiously aims to create new markets for China's online giants, support the expansion of the Beidou navigation system, and foster regulations conducive to the e-economy, it sometimes appears as an expensive yet vague set of intentions, lacking clear prioritization and, in some instances, receiving questionable support from the target governments. Despite that, the Digital Silk Road serves various roles from commercial to geopolitical. It is a platform not only for market expansion, but also for integration of regulatory frameworks that supports the burgeoning e-economy. As such, analyzing the future export potential of data and AI technologies become imperative. These technologies have immense commercial and political value, and it is predicted that China's online giants will likely continue to expand their influence in the region. Understanding these dynamics is key to comprehending the broader implications of digital transformation on global politics and economics. So when we compare China's experience with that of Southeast Asian nations, particularly Indonesia, we observe diverse models of digital governance. While Indonesia's approach emphasizes inclusivity and democratic engagement in the digital realm, China's model underscores state-centric management and efficiency. These divergent paths offer valuable insights into the varied ways digital technology can shape political institutions and social interactions. China's digital transformation presents us a complex source of learning. It underscores the need for a balanced approach in harnessing digital tools for governance one that respects individual freedoms while embracing the efficiency and opportunities offered by the digital age. In conclusion, as we envision the prospect for humanity in this digital transformation, we must recognize the digital era is not merely a technological phenomenon, but also a transformative force reshaping our social and political realities. China and Indonesia in particular, with their strategic position, progressive outlook, and diverse approaches in digital governance, can contribute significantly to a peaceful and constructive global digital transformation. In the spirit of unity in diversity, let us forge a path that embraces technological advancement while fortifying the pillars of democracy and social harmony. Together, we can strive for a digital era that not only connects us, but also enriches the human experience with more responsive governance, more vibrant civil societies, and more inclusive political participation. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to the productive discussion that this conference promises to inspire.
Thank you, Professor Linan Jia. I think it's very great presentation, and this theme is really updated with the condition right now. And I also really interested with your presentation today. But before that, before we open the discussion for the participant online and also participant in this room, I would like to give several conclusion about what Ibu Linan Jia already told. So in her presentation, she's talking about the digital transformation in Indonesia and also in China. That Ibu Linan Jia talked about in Indonesia, we have a country, large population, and also the growing technology, which is it gives us the opportunity for the growth for the economy. And also social media right now have a very big role in 2019 presidential, especially for the presidential election. And I think for the 2024 also have the effect for the presidential election again. And in it's quite different between Indonesia and also in China. That in China, the internet and also the digital activity have the concern from the government, and also the role as the state have a very big role to manage the digital activity in China. And there are several social media such as WeChat, Sina, and also Weibo that also right now become the public social media in China. And something that for me it's really interesting that Ibu Linan Jia also talked that the digital transformation right now, it's not only about the recognition for the digital tools or for the digital activity, but we have to remember that the digital information right now also reshape the social and political transformation, something like that. And it really need for the government to be the progressive government to face the digital activity right now. And also it become the path for democracy and social harmony to make a better community for the digital transformation, something like that. Okay, Ibu Linan Jia, I think before we open the discussion and Q&A with the participant, I have several questions for Ibu Linan Jia. Is it okay?
Sure, of course. Go ahead.
Okay, I think from what you already talked about the condition in China, I want to know how about the public transparency in China to manage the public grievance using the digital tools in China? Maybe that's
that's a great question. Actually, Chinese government have developed a very open channel. For example, we have mayor's inbox through which every citizens, they can just write directly to the mayor or local officials where they reside and report any kind of corruption cases or any tiny grievances, like there's a trash processing factory beside my residence that stinks and I want it to get solved, and they will respond to requests like that very timely. Also, it includes the reporting of corruption cases. But other than that, there's also channels directly between the citizen and the upper level government. So citizens can not only report grievances to local governments, the central government also frequently send down inspection teams where they would, collect information from local citizens about their opinion or their grievances of local officials. So that there are like multiple channels for citizens to voice their concerns.
Maybe I would like to give some explanation that in Indonesia, there are several regions in Indonesia who already use the digital transformation for the public service. Something like in Surabaya, we have also the website for the comment center or maybe for the public grievance, something like that. And right now, we also have a better system. Yeah, it's not only from the websites, but we also have the tools and the social media, something like that. Well, thank you, Ibu Linan Jia. I think we can open the discussion and question and answer from the participant. Maybe in this room, is there anyone who want to ask to Ibu Linan Jia? Is there anyone? Or okay. I think there's somebody who want to give the question for Ibu Linan Jia from the Zoom. I think I can give the time for Mr. Faruzan Anwar. Okay, thank you.
Right, okay. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Am I audible? Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks. Right, thank you so much, Professor. And firstly, thank you to the university for organizing this session. I think, again, it's a very timely and pertinent topic, and I'm happy to be a part of it. So, Professor, I actually have two questions. So the second one is directly from your talk. So you mentioned the divergent digitization paths adopted by China and different Southeast Asian nations, right? So in light of this divergence, what do you see as the scope for the integration of digital regulatory frameworks across ASEAN? And could this integration possibly extend to the realm of digital finance payment systems, like an alternative to SWIFT? So that's the first one. I can ask the second one now, or as you prefer. Should I ask the second question now? Or...
Sorry, I'll respond quickly of the first question, if that's okay with you. It seems like Anwar is frozen.
Ya. Dari Mas.
I think it's her connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
Well,
overview connection.
Oh, she might be back. She's raising a hand.
Yeah. Should we wait for her or?
Maybe we can proceed with the other questions, and then when she's back, we can answer her
Oh,
question.
okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
The first question from Ms. Faruzan. Is there anyone who want to ask to Ibu Linan Jia? Maybe from the forum here?
Ada yang mau bertanya, teman-teman?
Okay, if the student want to ask in Bahasa Indonesia, it's okay. I will try to translate to Ibu Linan Jia.
Okay.
Sure.
Oh, it's okay.
Sure.
Also, we can post a question in the chat too.
Yeah. Maybe
All right, so
read it. Yeah, I will read it for you, Ibu.
Right.
Okay. In light of the recent ban on e-commerce transaction on social media in Indonesia,
How can the state balance the need for consumer and local retailer protection with the economic potential of e-commerce on social media? Will civil society, given its role as pro-consumer, be better incorporated in designing and amending regulatory frameworks? That's the first question. And the second question is, given the divergent digitalization path adopted by China and Southeast Asian countries, what is the scope for the integration of digital regulatory frameworks across ASEAN? What might the implication of such integration be in the realm of financial payment system for the region, an alternative to SWIFT? Thank you.
Thanks for Anwar's questions. Those are all great questions. And to be honest, I'm not an expert of the specifics of Southeast Asian digital transformation, right? That's why I only made broad comments on that. And the recent ban on e-commerce transaction on social media in Indonesia is very interesting. And I think the citizens here, rather than, initiators of the service they want, sometimes citizens or consumers are the reception end of whatever service they're provided with, right? So in this case, I think the action by the Indonesian government may have its logic. I do not have detailed information on specifically what are the reasons of such ban. But I do think there are risks, of course, on e-commerce transactions on social media. For example, lack of verification system, lack of the social credit system to make sure all the transactions are legit. So there might be legitimate concern there. And I think in a society with a very vibrant rule of law and a vibrant credit system, maybe such transaction is fine. And whenever in a society where the related regulational system are not that mature or problematic or in development, maybe there's a rationale for the government to be more cautious on allowing the expansion or the growth of such, transaction platform to be operated in. So about the divergent digitization path adopted by China and Southeast Asian countries, the scope of integration of digital regulatory frameworks, that's also very interesting, as we know that ASEAN, as a regional organization, the member states all have very distinct social system, political system, and development stage. So as far as I know, each country have a pretty diverging stages of regulation regarding such topics, right? So some countries are more advanced in making such regulations, but some countries are relatively lagging behind, all due to specifics of each country. And I think when we consider the China's system of digital regulatory framework, it's very interesting because Chinese government is a very strong government with very deep penetration into the society, probably more than any other countries in the world. So in this case, we need to keep in mind the specifics of the China case. And when we try to discuss whether we can transport some of the China's experience to other countries like Southeast Asia, like ASEAN countries, I think it's very important to think about the capability of the state and the legitimacy of the state. How strong or how capable are the states to make such decisions? And, financial payment system, unfortunately, I think China have a relatively closed financial payment system. Although domestically, it's very integrated. Like we said, the super app, like WeChat, we can basically do anything with WeChat. We don't need to bring wallet with us. It has long been a legend of a wallet with paper money because we can literally pay with anything with WeChat. Domestically, it makes people's life convenient, but of course, there are also risks, right? You know, such integration of the payment financial management system with a social media app is actually, you know, I think very specific in the Chinese context. I do not know if there's any chance in any other societies that such integration can reach such a level. For example, in the US, there are different digital payment platforms, right? We can pay through more traditional ways, and more newer ways like Apple Pay, and then the majority of people in the US still use credit card, and some even use paper checks, right? So in the US, the integration of the financial system with digital technology has not been going very smoothly because of the concern of privacy and information sharing between different industries in the society, right? So the specifics of the China cases should be taken with a grain of salt, because in the case of Southeast Asian countries, there are different levels of, you know, regulations on the privacy law, regulations on different industries, regulation on the financial industry. So I think I personally have doubts about how deep the integration in the region with regard to the financial payment system can go, you know, beyond the already pretty solid, the traditional type of payment system. I think a system, for example, based on social media or some newer form of payment, even if it make advance, I will have, you know, some concern about it, you know, given the different conditions and different regulatory realities in different countries, in ASEAN countries. I hope that answered the question.
Okay, thank you. Oh, so how? Okay, very interesting. Thank you very much, Professor. I think she cannot talk directly because of due to the internet connection, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any question again for Professor Chiu?
Can I ask, Professor?
Okay.
Rita?
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity. Professor, I'd like to ask something related to my topic of interest in public diplomacy. As several weeks ago, you reviewed my proposal about public diplomacy. So my question is, how has the Chinese government leveraged the technology, as you mentioned about AI and big data, in terms of China's public diplomacy? Do you see any, adjustments or advancements of this technology impact China's relations with other countries in terms of its people-to-people connection?
Great question. Actually, it's a very interesting question. China's social media, for example, is basically a closed ecosystem. Foreigners can register WeChat, but it's not easy. So WeChat is the most common, social media platform in China. Maybe Weibo goes next. But the reality that China's, given its giant market, it can support a completely independent ecosystem in digital when it comes to digital technology and social media platforms. So this, I think, is not really contributing to China's public diplomacy approach, because the rest of the world is relying on the more open platforms, right? Like Twitter, Facebook, other type of, more open platforms used by the majority of the rest of the world. While domestically, China is relying on this closed ecosystem, which is pretty much closed to foreigners, right? I think there's different complicated steps for a non-Chinese citizen to be able to participate into this ecosystem. So I think in general, that's not contributing to the China's approach for public diplomacy, because they can, for example, there's the wolf warrior diplomacy, right? We read about it. Chinese diplomats posting, arguments with the foreign diplomats about, the China stance on Twitter. But then again, those platforms are not politically neutral either. I've read research and anecdotal evidence that, sometimes pro-China arguments are not exactly censored, but, are not flowing freely on those type of media platforms. So, we talk about government surveillance and censorship of internet and social media. That is not only in China, right? It's everywhere in the world. It's just different types and different degree. So for the Chinese public diplomacy effort to be conducted on those platforms that is not, integrated into the Chinese society, I think it just creates another layer of difficulty for communication, right? Because those diplomats, they need to reach out to a platform they're probably not familiar with, and to convey their ideas and their arguments. And also about the language, right? So, all the foreign platforms, we pretty much need to communicate in English, although maybe in ASEAN countries, there are platforms that rely on different sub-languages, which is, used widely locally. But the majority of those Twitter, Facebook platform like those, Snapchat, I think English might be the primary operating language. And that is also not contributing to the Chinese public diplomacy, right? Because language itself is a way of thinking. And if we can't really convey our ideas in Chinese through a widely used Chinese platform, then inevitably there will be some loss in translation, and they'll create some distance between the Chinese government effort to promote its diplomatic agenda, right? And arguments. So yeah, I think the closed ecosystem of the China's internet market and social media market, in the short term, it's good for the Chinese government, maybe in the long term too. But specifically in the area of public diplomacy, I don't really think it's contributing.
Yeah, thank you, Professor. Language barrier is one thing, and but we also know that not all the public officers or diplomats also a good public speaker or a public. They're good in delivering his message or her messages. So that's one thing. But we also need to consider the potential how the technology, AI, and big data also contribute to this foreign policy making, right? Also not only in public diplomacy, but also in political and economic relations, from not only for China, but also for Indonesia. We need to push or promote this, how we need the use of technology to precise the foreign policy making process, I guess. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
Okay, there is a question from our dean, Wu Chiu. Please.
Thank you, Mbak Jeng and Ibu Lina, Ibu Linan Jia. I'm Ampel, colleague, the Dean of the Social and Political Faculties, and welcome to visit only using the online. Maybe the other time you can go to Surabaya and maybe using the offline. Maybe it will be better for me and for all students here.
Of course.
I asked for the other issue, maybe especially about the Indonesia and China relation, regarding especially about the China and the people of the China perspective, especially about the after China claim on the China Sea, on the South China Sea, where China claimed that it will, it's part of its territory, and China explore some of the sea, yeah, in the China South Sea. So it is make Indonesia, especially for the Indonesian, worry about it, because not only Indonesia, maybe the other countries, especially in ASEAN, like Philippines, for example, and Singapore, Thailand, and the other country, are worrying about the arrival of some ship from China to explore the material from the China South Sea. I just want to know about your perspective and the pupil perspective and the university perspective about it. Please, Ibu Linan Jia.
Thank you. It's a very challenging question. I'm not exactly an expert on this dispute specifically, but I think from the perspective of the internet and social media, and its impact between the relationship between citizen and government in China, a lot of times the emotion or the attitude of the citizens have some interaction with the government stance, right? So because of the nationalism in Chinese internet, a lot of times Chinese netizens will, have very heated discussion, like on the platform, like I mentioned in the keynote speech, Qiangguo Luntan platform. They will discuss issues like territorial disputes like that. And it's interesting that sometimes the Chinese government allow such discussion to go on. And, in some perspective, it can be a form of, we call pressure valve, right? Citizens, they release their emotions online, and then, it could be good for the government to have the pressure relieved from the society about any kind of grievances and things like that, right? So, Chinese government would allow, and sometimes, not exactly encourage, but in a controlled information environment, anything that's allowed to be discussed, we can perceive it as some form of government permit for something to be talked about, right? For a contentious issue like territorial disputes in the South China Sea, or issues like China's dispute with Japan, things like that. I think we, because of how Chinese system works, the decision of the Chinese government, their stance on the territorial issue, it's not exactly directly, a convey of the citizen opinion, right? So whatever the policymakers decide, they will make their decision and they will implement the policy. And in this sense, the Chinese citizens, they can discuss it, but how much impact their discussion on the policy making is questionable sometimes. And interestingly, it's very we should be cautious about the nationalism reflected in the Chinese social media and Chinese internet when we talk about territorial disputes like this, right? Because a lot of times the nationalist arguments are expanded by how social media works, right? More contentious argument would be reposted more and would be shared more, while the more neutral or more mild stance would be less shared and less reposted. So I think in this issue, the social media and technological development have very complicated impact on an issue like this. I'm not in the stance to comment on the Chinese government's, decision on that. But as far as I know, there are many nationalist argument and debate in Chinese internet platforms. And if you can read Chinese, you'll probably be troubled by that because the nationalist sentiment of the Chinese people are pretty high. on the internet, arena. So yeah, I don't think that answers your question completely, but that's based on my expertise. Thank you.
Fashion. Okay, is there anyone who wants to add more? Okay, please come forward. There's our student who want to ask you, Bucho.
Yeah.
You can use the microphone there. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for your opportunity, Linan Jia. I'm Satya Dava Shabana from International Relations student in UINSA. So I would like to ask about your second presentation. I mean the second page about the China's technology serving the tool to empower and engage the state power. Then my question is, then how the Chinese government do the implication using the China's geopolitical dynamics? Because as we all know, the China's geopolitical was so like the best dynamics in Asia.
Wow. Yeah.
So that's all my question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So what's your name? What's your Bana?
Satya Dava Shabana.
Satria. Okay, thank you. Thank you for the question, Satria. Maybe Bucho, you can directly answer the question.
Can you rephrase the question a little bit? I'm not sure I catch everything.
So Satria
you
is
said.
asked about how the Chinese government using the geopolitical for the dynamics for the geopolitical. Is it right, Satria? Okay, because Satria said that China have the best dynamic for the geopolitics. So what's your
Opinion.
what's your what's your opinion on geopolitical?
Geopolitical?
Yes. Between the between the digital technology and also the impact to the geopolitical in the Chinese government.
So the relationship between digital technology and China's geopolitical influence?
Yes.
So that actually is related to Rita's question, I think. So, like you said, China's geopolitical prowess is pretty significant, especially in the East Asian and Southeast Asia region, right? China have huge influence, partly because of its market access for the neighboring countries. But with regard to its geopolitical impact through digital technology, I think first we can think of it through the more technical aspect, like the exporting of technologies, right? The 5G related technology. China, I think, currently have one of the world's most developed 5G like patent system. The related technology, China is very ahead in the world. So if the region, for example, in Southeast Asia, adopt a lot of such technologies made or created by the Chinese enterprises, then of course China will probably be able to have more geopolitical impact in those countries because of, the monopoly of technology in a sense. But with regard to for example, the realm of social media or public diplomacy, I think it's a different question because I talked with Rita before. I asked her about how does she think the impact or the real influence of China's public diplomacy in Southeast Asia, and her answer was that it's not that well, right? Did not work that good. So I think for like people-to-people diplomacy from this perspective, there's still much work left for the Chinese government to do, beyond the promotion of government-supported big projects, maybe focus more on the people-to-people diplomacy and to have more civil society communication. between, you know, countries that matters in China's geopolitical concern. But I think, you know, for the hard technological side, China is definitely imposing more influence in the nearby regions, like I mentioned in the presentation, right? You know, these different standards adopted by these newly emergent technologies will have long-term impact on China's geopolitical influence in the future.
Okay, thank you, Ibu Linan Jia. Okay, anyone, is there any question again for Ibu Jia? Okay, please come forward. You can stand up, I think. You don't need to sit down there.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi.
My name is Abdul Muiz. I am from international relations student from UINSA Ampel. The question is, as we can see, Chinese and Indonesian is undeveloping country. Talking about e-commerce, I want to ask about economy of Indonesian and China. And the question is, as we can see, China was having some economy that we can see in naked eyes, such as robotic and anything. My question is, what the first step can, as Indonesian youth, can do to make economy Indonesian become more developed? That is my question.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. We will applause for the question. So, you can get the question, Ibu Jia.
Yes. How can Indonesian youth to help improve the economy of the country?
Yes.
Is that?
Yeah.
A very interesting question, actually. And I mean, I don't know if you know, but China is also facing some, you know, youth employment problem actually lately, right? So, you know, after the pandemic, the economy of all the countries in the world is not doing very well. So, but there are still some lessons that can be drawn from Chinese youth. So I think the utilization of the social media and new digital technology is actually a very good angle in this question, because I don't know if you are familiar with a platform in China called Douyin, which is the TikTok, the domestic version of the TikTok in China. So a lot of people, including youth, they would, you know, try to participate in e-commerce on platforms like that, because the cost of entrance of such type of activity is not very high, right? Anyone have a phone, have access to internet, you can record a video of something, either to sell a product or to explain some ideas you're interested in. And there are different ways youth can, you know, be economically benefited from such activity, right? If you have enough followers, for example, you may get more income from the advertisement come with your followers, or you can help to sell more product if you want. So I think it's very helpful to observe how Chinese young people are doing in those platforms, because they can be very creative. Like I once read an article about a young person in China who was trying to sell honey, bee honey, right? He was trying to sell honey, and he would make videos of him getting the honey, and it was like full of the bites of the bees. And he actually got really popular online, and which led to, you know, a good sell of the product he was trying to promote. So I think for youth, it's helpful to think out of the box and to be more creative, and to, you know, to fully use your own advantage, your knowledge about your community and your age group, what's the thing that's special about your identity, right? And sometimes people are really interested in that. And sometimes being genuine on social media can actually attract a lot of attention, which is probably helpful for, your personal financial situation. And then it will also be helpful for the general financial situation for the country or the community or the society. That's my input.
Okay, you can give applause. Okay, so you just said that you can be more creative and use the TikTok wisely. It's not only for the content, but also you can sell the product there, or you can produce your great ideas to the TikTok. Is that right, Michu?
Yeah.
Because,
Yes.
because like in also in Indonesia, we have a very big number for the Gen Z and also Gen Z who use the TikTok, and I think I have also several students use the TikTok for the explanation about this in the class, something like that. So it's right now the digital transformation is really big, I think. Okay. Yeah. I think there's still a question. There's any question from the online Zoom? I can give the time for the Justine. Where? Hello, Justine. You can ask directly or
in the chat box.
On the chat box, maybe. Hello, Justin, are you there?
Yeah, no.
Okay. Okay, maybe there's still bad connection in Justin. Okay, maybe I would like to check first from the chat box. I think this is not question, but a comment from the Fabuzan. And talking about the perhaps greater engagement between Chinese and local digital setups could come in the form of more equitable partnership, such as TikTok's attempt to partner with Tokopedia and Bukalapak. Yeah, I think that's right. Greater local ownership of digital partnership would help address the concerns of actors with less developed digital ecosystem, as with greater transparency while creating local employment opportunities. Okay, thank you. I still waiting for another question. Maybe I have a question to you. Especially this question in line with the question from Mbak Rida. So what do you think, and how far the big data used in the government Chinese to make the decision making? I think I want to know about that. How far the big data and also AI are used in the government of Chinese to make the decision making?
You mean domestic policy or international policy?
Or maybe you can explain both the local and also
yeah, so I think there are more research on the use of such big data and AI in the Chinese domestic governance. For example, the social credit system Chinese government is trying to develop and promote across different localities that utilize big data. For example, it can track people's illegal activities, and then that will transfer to their later, for example, inability to buy a plane ticket or something. For people with low social credit, there are future consequences of that, and that is based a lot on integration of different information across departments, right? So I think domestically, big data and AI is definitely already having a huge impact on Chinese governance. Also, with regard to the monitoring of local officials, right? More and more government practices are recorded through the big data platform, and so more information are being integrated, and the central authority can have more access to more detailed local information. So that also helps to regulate local official behaviors. And as far as internationally, I actually am not an expert on that. I think, as I addressed in the keynote speech itself, the digital Silk Road will definitely have an impact both on China's international policy and on the countries that are impacted by such initiatives, right? For example, if China is able to promote its 5G technology in a region like Africa, then the future development of Africa would probably be highly influenced by the development of Chinese technology, the follow-up technology. So that, I think, will potentially impact China's foreign relationship with the countries that adopts its technology per se. So I think, when it comes to big data and AI technology, it's a very technical issue. So as non-experts in technology, there's only so much I can comment on, but I think the implication is significant because the integration of how much data can be shared between countries after the adoption of the Chinese technology will also be a very important research problem for future scholars to study, right? If a country use Chinese technology, then how much data can be shared, or what are the legal regulations on the information sharing in such cases, right? So I think it will have very long-term but very complicated implication for China's foreign policy.
Okay, thank you, Linan Jia. I think Mr. Justin give the question in the chat box. I will read it out. How was the advancement of digitalization policy or social media in China help in promoting the dissemination of information from the local and social society organization upward and downward, especially in the expression of grievance and channeling proposed policy?
That's a good question. And I think digital policy and social media has been functioning more and more significantly in Chinese, policy making. Increasingly, Chinese government is integrating the opinions of the citizens into its policy-making process. For example, the Chinese government passed the civil law lately, like I think a few years ago, which widely solicited opinions and comments from citizens, I think both online and offline. So online platforms definitely will help such initiatives to incorporate more citizen input into the policy making of the government. With regard to expression of grievance, like I said, there are different channels citizens can express their grievance to different levels of government, right? They can directly contact local government, and they can also possibly express their issue to delegates from central government when such opportunities presents itself. But I think it is a very big change from the more traditional older ways of petition. There was a history of Chinese citizens petitioning across different levels of government. So it used to be common that, for example, a villager would go to Beijing, like from a remote province far from Beijing. They would go to Beijing and to report some grievance against local government officials. But such practice have been less and less common because first it was, I think, legally banned for citizens to petition across governments. So the local government would be most likely the first, the initiative for local citizens to be petitioning about, right? So basically, a lot of burden is on local governments to manage the grievances expressed by citizens, and they are under huge pressure of that. I have talked to local government officials personally, and they are basically buried by all kinds of small and big requirements or comments by citizens. And a lot of times they're obligated to address that because, if the things remain unresolved, then it might fester further and may caught attention from the central government, which is not good for the career perspective for local officials. So I think in general, digital transformation definitely have helped Chinese citizens to at least voice their grievances easier. And I think there are some research that come up with the conclusion that some of the grievances do get addressed, but maybe not all of them, right? Because local government have limited resource, and it's also hard for them to address every single request initiated by citizens.
Thank you, Ibu. Maybe is there anyone again?
Di Zoom ada Mbak.
Okay. Okay, wait a moment. Okay, I think I will give the time for our participant in Zoom meeting. There's someone who want to ask. Maybe I will give the time for Mr. Emir.
Thank you for the opportunity. Can you hear my voice?
Yeah, clearly.
Okay, thank you very much. Professor, I'd like to ask the question because this is like my friends, my fellows in my rooms in dormitory experience using the media social, which is that it's really experience and get the trauma because how the Chinese government control the scam like attitude scamming, like when they also like marketing sell the product there, and they manipulate actually the products, and then it's really hard the complex the process because like my friends like they like did like several times to go to the police station and then like asking the progress because like there's a scammer, and then try to connect with the bank office, which is that really complex to control, and then try to catch up with the such a number of the parties that do the scammer, because this is like cybersecurity, I guess, how they like manage the step, manage the attitude, and then control them, and then like why there is no response for where's the responsibility to, because this is like the rights of the civil, because this is like money like saving in the bank cards and then gone suddenly. Thank you very much. I guess that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a very important question. And, you know, scams happens everywhere, right? Not only in China. For example, in the US, there are plenty of scams. In China, I think the issue is interesting because with the increasing number of elderly people, some of them are more suspect to internet scams, right? Or scams related to technology or digital technology. So the government is actually paying a lot of attention on that, and they would send out, you know, reminders for people to be cautious about that. But I think once the scam happened, the possibility of resolving it, I don't know if it's very good so far, because I think a lot of the attention and effort of the government has been paid to the prevention of scam. For example, to make a bank transfer, or, you know, to make any kind of transfer or financial activity, there's a series of steps that, you know, real identity verification, and there are different procedures to be finished before any transaction can be initiated. But, you know, other than that, if some scammers are able to pass those initial barriers and then someone was still suffered from being scammed, then I think the police capability of actually solving those or retrieving the fund, I don't know about the percentage of, you know, how much fund or how much money being scammed can be retrieved. So I think like other type of issue in China, a lot of time the responsibility is put upon the citizens. Like the citizens are expected to be alert of potential spams. For example, during the pandemic, there were also like pandemic related scams, like where people will receive phone call about you have to be quarantined right now, blah blah blah, and somehow there's money related. And it's up to the citizens to talk among each other. I think that's one of the channel is citizens learn from each other, rather than putting the responsibility solely on government to manage or to prevent scams. The communication within the civil society is one way to address such harm, right? Which is not ideal, but I think government have limited resource too. So also the nature of the crime in the digital era is also different, right? Sometimes such scam can be very complicated and very hard for the ordinary citizens, especially elderly, to figure out what's happening. So, for example, my parents would just ignore all phone numbers they don't know. They just don't pick up the phone call and don't engage in any activity they do not recognize. So yeah, I think the responsibility is put on the citizen themselves a lot.
Okay, thank you, Ibu Jo. I think we still have several questions in the chat box. And there's another question in the forum. So I will read it out first from the chat box from Dian Putri. First of all, forgive if my question is out of topic. Does the IBF created by America, where they are starting to expand into Asia, have an impact on the digital economy or the economy in China in general? Because as we know, China's influence on inflammation and the economy in the Asian region is very large. Should we complete the question?
I can answer this one first. Okay. And I think maybe this lady means information and the economy, right? Not inflammation. In any case, might be a typo there. So I think it also have a relationship to the issue about, people to people diplomacy we mentioned before, right? Like I was answering that question. There is kind of digital segregation between China and the outside world, right? So China have a separate, basically independent internet and technological ecosystem, right? The payment, financial payment, the banking system, and the social media and the internet in general are largely, contained within the territory of China. So in this case, we may be able to argue that there might be a upper hand for the country like, the US to expand their influence in region like Southeast Asia because, or in Asia in general, because of this closed ecosystem of China's internet, right? Like I said, when the citizens are not using the same platform to communicate, this reality may create some sort of, emotional detachment between citizens of different countries. So like if Chinese citizens are not able to, relying mainly on the domestic version of social media platform and internet platform, then basically there's no information exchange between China and other Asia and Southeast Asia countries or citizens, right? Unless they're using similar type of information source, there's very little share of common ground on what type of information, what type of knowledge they're receiving. So I think that also is related to the concept of soft power in international relations, right? So Chinese government is very strong in managing the information flow. but with regard to the expansion of the soft power in the digital era, I think the different clan of digital ecosystem will have big impact on, which country would have more impact on which region, right? In this case, a lot of the digital services, the platforms used in Asian countries and Southeast Asian countries are originated from the US, although there are some local initiatives. But, things like Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, all those are, widely used in other countries in Asia except China. So I think this kind of civil society platformization might have an impact on how deep the government can actually impose their impact in the region. Should we move on to the next question?
Okay, we can move to the next question. Okay, from Hesti Eka. On the website of the Foreign Ministry of the People's Republic of China, there's some kind of article about the ASEAN-China initiative on enhancing cooperation on e-commerce. In the article, there's the sentence facilitate the participation of women and youth in startup and job creation. My question is, from China's side, what kind of facilities does China provide for ASEAN countries, especially Indonesia, in supporting startups?
Oh, wow. That is a very specific question. And I think it's unfortunately out of my expertise. I think, according to my knowledge of China's domestic support for, startups and women and youth job creation, I think southern China might be a good place to look at. For example, in Hainan province, there are a lot of research and initiatives on supporting youth, entrepreneurship, right? So I think southern China in that sense might be doing better than northern China. This is like a domestic diversity of the kind of emphasis of government activity. So I think it will be helpful to look at, for example, what does the Hainan government and the research institutions in Hainan province are providing for the women and youth, entrepreneurship and startups. Because as far as I know, the southern region of China, especially Hainan province, is investing a lot on supporting the youth employment, youth startups, and also try to help the nearby regions, which include Southeast Asia. Again, I think it's important to keep in mind about the emphasis difference of policy between central government and local government in China. So a lot of times, the directives from the central government can be relatively broad and general, and a lot of times it is up to the local government localities like Hainan province to really implement specific policies and supportive resources for such kind of initiatives. So I think maybe rather than looking into the central government website, go to the local government website, and maybe you can find more information on that.
Thank you, Wicho. Maybe we can give applause for our speaker today, right? Okay, Professor, I think we already at the end of our event for this session 1. But before we close, maybe I will give the time for Professor to give the closing statement for the topic today.
Oh, thank you. I didn't really prepare this, but thank you very much for all the very informative and vibrant discussion. I learned a lot from the questions, and I did not really have an expect of what kind of questions are interested by the Indonesian students and scholars, right? And this gave me a very good opportunity to know what are the most concerning issues among the mind of the society there. So I thank you for the opportunity for me to present this speech, and I very appreciate that.
For Professor Linan Jia, we can give applause again for her. Well, before we end this, we'll give the time to the committee for the certificate handover, maybe for the Professor Linan Jia. Okay, maybe. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Because we are online, professor, so the handover certificate also in online. So maybe we can take a photograph together for the session.
Oh, wait.
Maybe for the committee. Okay.
Okay. Wait.
Sorry. I think the certificate is wrong.
Oh, I'm sorry. Wait.
Okay, we still wait for the team to prepare the certificate handover. Okay. Okay, yeah. Okay, maybe we can take a photograph together first for this session.
Wait.
1, 2.
Ya, Mbak, tolong screen sebelah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Ibu Linan Jia.
Thank you so much.
Before we end, maybe for all the participants from Zoom, we can take a photograph together, and please open the camera. And take the photo together.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Maybe the committee will take photograph for the first until the third page, yeah.
Yep.
For the Zoom meeting. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, please. The first
page. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Cheese. Say cheese, everyone. Okay. Now the second page. 3, 2, 1. Okay.
The last page.
Sudah.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for the great presentation, Ibu Chio. Maybe we can meet another time, and hopefully you're doing fine and great. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. That's the end of our session today. Please, for all the participants to be ready to go before the panel session. Thank you so much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Professor Jia.
Thank you, Rita.
Ladies and
Should
gentlemen.
I exit the meeting?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, please. You can, Professor. Thank
See you
you.
later. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, let's give a lively applause for our speaker, moderator, and all of us. Dear all participants, before we enter the parallel session, we would like to remind you to fill out the attendance form for 2 days of attendance. The link of the attendance form is available on the chat box of the Zoom meeting. Please fill in the attendance for today and tomorrow's session to receive the certificate of participation. Thank you.
Dear Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, now we are in the first panel session. In this session, we will be having 2 filter rooms, which are 1A with the theme Intersectionality Perspective in Gender and Politics,
and 1B with the theme Transformative Social Policy, Initiative, Welfare Reform, and SMEs.
The participants are kindly requested to use your device and enter the virtual room.
Berapa? 3 atau 2? Oh, 1A1B. Oh, 2 berarti. Oke, wait.
Bu Ani. Terima kasih, Ibu panitia semuanya.
Thank
Mbak Ajeng, Mas Lutfi.
1A, yes. 1B.
Salam untuk Pak Dekan, Ibu.
Ya Mbak Rida, sehat-sehat ya Mbak Rida.
Ya, siap. Lagi minus di sini.
Minus berapa? Ya, Desember pulang.
Insya Allah, Ibu. Siap.
Sudah, reportnya sudah ada.
Once again, to all participants are kindly requested to enter the break room, which are 1A and 1B. Thank you.
Oke. Udah ada nih record rooms. Ada yang sudah masuk nggak? Ya, waktunya pindah. Waktunya pindah.
Once again, to all participants,
Parallel session.
Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, now we are in the parallel sessions. In this session, we will be having two filter rooms, which are 1A with the theme intersectionality perspective in gender and politics,
and 1B with the theme transformative social policy, initiative welfare reform, and SMEs.
The participants are kindly requested to use your device and enter the filter room.
Baca bisa.
Ibu tanya, untuk roomnya sudah tersedia gitu kah?
Sudah.
Oke, baru keluar. Oke. Oh ya, mungkin bisa di type di chat juga untuk instructionnya.
Oh ya.
Ada beberapa teman saya, classmates mau join juga kayaknya.
Oke. Ini aku
Ya, thank you. Terima kasih semuanya.
Sama-sama, Miss.
Are kindly requested to use your device and enter the virtual room.
Judulnya apa?
Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, and all participants, we're moving to the second plenary session with our invited speaker, Dr. Jaap de Ruiter from Tilburg School of Humanities and Digital Sciences, the Netherlands. In this session, we will be moderated by Nur Lutfi Hidayatullah SIPM in with the theme Muslim communities in European democracies facing the forces of populism, the case of the Netherlands. For Mr. Lutfi, the time is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd. Welcome back, everybody. We are currently on the second plenary session of SAICOPSS 2023, and we have already went through two parallel sessions and one earlier plenary session. Today, we will have a very interesting topic from our distinguished speaker, Dr. Jaap de Ruiter. How are you, sir?
I'm fine, thank you. Thank you
so much for being a part of our international conference. I will read out the CV of Dr. Jaap de Ruiter. He is a researcher and lecturer from Tilburg School of Humanities and Digital Sciences, Department of Culture Studies, Tilburg School of Humanities and Digital Sciences. Okay, and his research interests include the status and role of Arabic language and of religion of Islam in Western Europe and Morocco. His publications in diverse languages among French, center on the themes, and he participated in debates on Arabic and Islam in national and international contexts. And he participated in many Dutch and European research and development projects. Give a round of applause, everybody. Dr. Jaap de Ruiter will deliver a presentation on Muslim communities in European democracies facing the forces of populism, the case of the Netherlands. Dr. de Ruiter, are you ready to present?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, and our operator will share the screen, and please let us know if it's time to go to the next screen.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay. Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to your esteemed conference.
You're welcome.
I would also say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Shukran jazilan lil da'wa. Thank you very much for your invitation. And even more, I appreciate the fact that you allowed me to give the presentation in the afternoon. If not, I would have been obliged to give it at 3 o'clock in the night here in the Netherlands, because there is a time difference of 6 hours. And in your morning, it is middle of the night in the Netherlands. And for that, I'm just a bit too old now to rise very early. So thank you very much. Well, indeed, well, you announced me duly. So let's just get started. And maybe, of course, this is my first slide. And maybe we go to the second slide. Yeah, well, of course, well, that's the conference. And then the third slide. Yes, which is basically the title of my paper, as you can see here. With Europe next to it, but maybe we just continue with the fourth slide and then I'll start my presentation. Yeah, first. So Western European democracies are anew confronted today with the forces of populism. Populist parties aim at penetrating political bodies such as city councils, provinces and parliaments. Populists state that they adhere to the rules of democracy, but parts of their political programs can only be realized if non-democratic measures are applied. For example, the Dutch Party for Freedom, PVV, aims at the realization of an Islamless Netherlands. The elections program of the party states, it is an existential problem. The survival of a free Netherlands depends on the degree in which we know how to push back Islam. If the operation of pushing back Islam would be executed, I think that would imply that the country would be free of Muslims as well. How otherwise should an Islamless Netherlands be realized? Muslims, after all, are the bearers of Islam. There does not exist an Islam without Muslims. The whole issue is reinforced by another point in the program of this party, which aims at the establishment of a ministry for immigration, remigration, and de-Islamization. And how can a country be de-Islamized with Muslims remaining in that same country, is my question. So whatever the case is, the realization of such party issues implies that Dutch Muslims must forcibly leave the country, and that, of course, will not be realized voluntarily, let alone democratically. So what we see is that the populist parties are growing in importance in Europe, and that it is, given their party programs, not without danger for European democracies. So the question arises whether European democracies, and the Netherlands in particular, are strong enough to control the forces of populism and whether they can subsequently prevent these undemocratic forces from damaging democracy. So the question is today, what is the strength of Western European democracies, the Netherlands in particular, in opposing these forces? Well, in treating this question, maybe we go to the next slide. Let me see. Yes. So in treating this question, I make use of the, the ideas of this philosopher, the French philosopher Claude Lefort. Maybe we can go to the next slide then. Yes. So he was a French philosopher. He lived from 1924 to 2010. And so he was in his time fascinated by the forces of Stalinism in Soviet Union and fascism, of course, in Germany. And after World War II, by rising totalitarianism in Eastern European states falling under the hegemony of the Soviet Union. So he linked his ideas on totalitarianism to the principle of democracy. He was thinking of how does democracy function at best. He says, democracy is a system that is characterized by diversity, multiplicity, in which a permanent battle for power takes place. He declares that the place of power in democracy, let's say its core, is empty, and it should remain so. The various actors in democracies, political parties, governments, etc., compete for power. They try to reach the core without ever attaining it. They play, as it were, the game of democracy, which, if everybody abides by the rules, functions well. So the essence is that democracy is the ideal instrument for making compromises in governing a country, a city, a province, or whatever. That's why the core is empty. That's where the ultimate power is, and nobody should be able to fully exercise it. Because that same democracy has to face a formidable opponent that is closer to it than suspected, namely totalitarianism is in its bosom. You see here on the slide are some quotes, and I'm quoting also from my own paper. So he thinks that Lefort believes that in democracies, purely human societies flourish where different forms of relations and methods are maintained. At the same time, these democracies are faced with struggles. It is tempting to believe that totalitarianism is somewhere far away from democracy, but nothing is less true. Democracy is by nature diverse. People and parties from all kinds in ideological directions function in democracies. But there may come a time when a democracy can no longer handle that cultural, religious, and ethical diversity. If that is the case, the specter of totalitarianism arises from its own bosom, which is illusion of this one people, a concept, a one people idea, a concept that gains strength by expressing great hostility to others, and totalitarianism flourishes by hatred for the deviants. And so democracy may undergo the worrying change into a dictatorship. In such a case, the purely human society perishes. I'm quoting all the time Lefort here. Of course, you cannot see because this is on paper. So this idea of totalitarianism being in the bosom of democracy, maybe you will thought, yeah, well, come on, is this really true? But maybe we go to the next slide. Yes, so what we see here is that the leader of the German Nazi party, National Socialist German Labour Party, NSDAP in Germany in 1933, won the elections in 1932 in Germany. And later on, he was appointed chancellor in Germany. And as such, so he came up in democracy. And he was appointed chancellor. And then not more than 3 months later, he abolished democracy. And the rest is history, as we know, the Second World War, with all its atrocities. So that's the point of Lefort. There is always this danger of totalitarianism. Maybe we go to the next subject then. Well, anyway, so this is my quote, and I apply the ideas of Lefort on the complex relationship between democracy and totalitarianism on the case of the role of populist parties in Europe. Will they cause an unwanted shift from democracy to autocracy or not? That's a challenging question, of course, and that's what we'll be treating today. And I'm really curious also after your questions. But maybe we first go very briefly to the idea of populism. It's on the next slide, I think. Yes. We can say a lot of things about what populism is, but that goes a bit too far, and I have a limited time. Well, 45 minutes is a lot to in these days, but still that would take too much time of my presentation. I think we should also focus on the results of my conclusions. Anyway, so Western populism, as researchers have described it, is the political movement that strives after a strong independent state, reserved for the indigenous population only, cherishing its traditional Western values, inspired by a tradition of Christianity and humanism, excluding people with non-Western backgrounds, often Muslims. And it is characterized by the principle of the strong leader. It always talks about the people, as if the people is one, and as if the people has only one goal, common goal. But you, also in Indonesia, such an enormous country with so many people, you are of course also aware of the fact there is no such a thing as the Indonesian people wanting only this. No, there are various groups, there are various ethnicities, there is enormous diversity, and everybody has an idea about how the state should function, etc. The same here. So in this respect, the populists are completely not seeing a reality, because a state is by nature diverse, a people is by nature having different opinions and ideas, etc. Anyway, this is what they believe, and especially they have a very strong, then this split between the indigenous people and the others with the big capital O. And well, maybe we can try. We can have a look at some populist parties which are very active and these days in Europe. Yeah, thank you. This is a nice. This is a new slide. We have here in the Netherlands a new political party that was established around, I think, around 7-8 years ago. It's called Forum for Democracy. The leader is Thierry Baudet. And we have another one, the Party for Freedom. I mentioned it at the beginning of my presentation, of Geert Wilders. That's already the more traditional one, because we have had him already for more than 20 years. But anyway, so this other party. Well, anyway, maybe I just read the quote. Labeling a political party as populist is easy. So the researchers can say, well, this is a populist party because it complies to these ideas of populism. But that, of course, doesn't mean that the party will accept it. In general, party leaders state that they are regular parties functioning in a democracy and that they reject the populist label. That's interesting. Many populist parties will say, no, we're not populist, we're just democratic parties, we're just part of the system. But that's exactly what Lefort, of course, means. Yeah, they will present themselves as normal, democratic, and we just play the game. But watch out. If the opportunity rises, they try to gain control of the state, like what's happening these days in Hungary, where the Fidesz party has now complete control over the country, over the parliament, and over the laws, etc. Basically, to the outside, it looks like a democracy, but when you are in it, you see that it has become an autocracy. Anyway, so Thierry Baudet, its leader, says in November 2019 in the Dutch parliament that he stands on the side of the populations, that he is in favor of democratic renewal. He wants to correct those skewed elites. That's why I'm a supporter of populism, he says. But here he implies, he interprets populism as a kind of, a stream of democracy. Populism in the sense of I'm representing the people, and as such he is really a populist, but he presents it as I'm a Democrat, so there's nothing to be afraid of. But when you look at his ideas, there is all the reason to be afraid or worried for this party. Maybe we go to the next slide. Yes. So one of the most the oldest populist parties in Europe is the Rassemblement National. In France, it used to be called the Front National. You see the leader here, Marine Le Pen. She's the daughter of the one who started the political party, who established it, Jean-Marie Le Pen. He's still alive. He's very old. And he's the man that at a certain point said that the gas chambers where 6 million Jews were killed, or many Jews were killed in the genocide, in the Holocaust, in the Second World War, was just a detail in world history. This party, especially in the beginning decades of this party, when her father was still in charge, has really this sentiment of anti-Semitism. She, Marine Le Pen, tries to distance herself from her father and present her as a real populist party, with not specifically aiming at Jews, etc., but much more at Muslims in France. The party has, since its establishment, been a constant political power in France, collecting in general between 10 and 15% of the votes in each election. In the last presidential election between her and President Macron, she got in the second and the final round around 43% of the votes, which is really a lot. So Macron was re-elected with 57. So here you see how strong this party is. And undoubtedly, she will be also the candidate in the new presidential elections that still have to come. Interesting enough that if you read the election program of this party of 2017, you will not find the words Islam and Muslims. They use the words Islamism and Islamist 5 times. I counted it. So the program stresses the need to combat Islamist terrorism and Islamists, and it gives the impression that it does not oppose the presence of Muslims in France. Like, no, they are also citoyens, as they say in French. They are also citizens. But at a certain point, Marine Le Pen also said that Muslims praying in the streets of the city of Lyon, that she considered that as a kind of an occupation, implicitly referring to the Nazi occupation of France in the Second World War. So it added the program gives the impression we have nothing against Muslims, but of course we have everything against Islamism and etc. Still, I'm wondering what would happen if they would be in charge in France. Then another party, that may be the next slide. Thank you. Yeah, so that's in Germany. The Alternative für Deutschland, the Alternatives for Germany. This is a relatively new populist party in Germany. It entered German Bundestag, so parliament, in 2014, with 13% of the votes, which is really a lot. And it is still quite a strong. Still has quite a strong presence in the German parliament. Anyway, if we have a look at the party program, it says, and I'm quoting, "Islam does not belong to Germany. The Alternative für Deutschland sees the spread of Islam and the presence of over 5 million Muslims, most of them being Turks, whose number is constantly growing, a great danger for our state and our society and our system of values." End quote. The Alternative for Germany party is against the building of minarets, the call to prayer, and funding of mosque building from Islamic countries, associations, or companies. They are against the wearing of the veil, the niqab, and the burqa. Female Muslim school teachers are not allowed to wear head covering clothing. Imams must preach in German and swear loyalty to the German constitution. In my view, if the eventual execution of the measures AfD demands in its program, it would lead to serious discrimination of the Muslim community in Germany. The most telling point in the program is a statement that Islam does not belong to Germany. How should we interpret that? We have to be realistic. So this is a political party, it has its program. The program is not realized, but if it would be to realize, what would happen? I think it would be the end of democracy. Maybe we go to the next slide. The Belgian party Vlaams Belang, it used to be called Vlaams Blok, Flemish Bloc, but now it is called Vlaams Belang. Belang means interest, Flemish interest. The former party was called, as I said, Blok, Vlaams Flemish Bloc, and that last party was condemned in 2004 for inciting hatred to Muslims and discrimination, and therefore the party was banned. You see, that happens also in democracies, that sometimes parties are banned. But anyway, the leaders accepted the verdict, but just established a new party with another name, with the same abbreviation. The program of the party on Islam is elaborate, and the following quote may be considered essential. Stopping the Islamization of Flanders is a priority for Vlaams Belang. A de-Islamization of our society is only possible if policymakers dare to recognize that Islam is not a personal religion like Christianity, but also and above all an ideology that wants to replace our free society with an Islamic society based on Sharia. This is what we really hear a lot in populist parties, that they say that Islam is not a religion, but that it is an ideology, a totalitarian ideology. They have all kinds of arguments for that, but when you label them, such a religion, Islam in this case, as an ideology, then the following argument is, of course, there is freedom of religion in the Netherlands and in Belgium and in France, etc. But if Islam is not a religion, then it cannot count on the protection of the constitution that allows that, of course, for guarantees the freedom of religion. The same argument we see also with Geert Wilders of the Dutch Party of Freedom, that says, yeah, but Islam is not a religion, it is an ideology, it's a totalitarian ideology, so there is no relation whatsoever with the Dutch, in that case, the constitution. Maybe we can go to the slide of the Dutch constitution. Yeah, maybe another one. Sorry, now I'm going to swap a bit further. Maybe you go to the next one. No, another one. Another one. Sorry for that. Next one. And the next one. Yeah, this has to do with the fact that you are in charge of the PowerPoint. Maybe the next one. No, it's also not the correct one. I want one. Next one, please. Yes, sorry for that. Anyway, the Dutch constitution says that, well, there is this general equality article. All persons in the Netherlands shall be treated equally in equal circumstances. Discrimination on the grounds of religion, belief, political opinion, race, or sexual or any other grounds whatsoever shall not be permitted. And Article 6 is on the freedom of religion. Everyone shall have the right to profess freely his religion or belief, either individually or in community with others, without prejudice to his responsibility under the law. So when you say that Islam is not a religion, then Article 6 does not apply on Islam. That's basically the whole issue. Maybe we go back to the slide on Muslims in the Netherlands. So that's now we should go back. Sorry for that, but yes, here. Very briefly, there are around, we have a population of 17 million people in the Netherlands on this very small country. As you see, from north to south is 400 kilometers, and from east to west is only 150. And the Muslim community is around, well, nearly 1 million people, most of them being workers originally coming from Turkey and Morocco. We also have Muslims coming from Syria, of course, refugees, Afghanistan, Iran, and Iraq. And there are around 70,000, 20,000 Dutch Muslim converts. There is also a distinction between the Shiites and Sunnites, but most of them are Sunnites. I do not want to go too much, also because of the time, on the Muslim community in the Netherlands, but I think it's important to know it's around 5% of the population. There are around 500 mosques in the Netherlands. They're everywhere. Newly built ones. They really look, well, sometimes they look very traditional Turkish and Moroccan, and sometimes they're really modern. So the Muslim community, I would say, is thriving in the Netherlands. Maybe go to the next slide, just checking. Yeah, because as we have seen in many other Western European countries as well, that part of the Muslim community, also in our country, labels itself as fundamentalist or Salafi or even jihadi. And we had our share, of course, of, let's say, fighters joining Islamic State in the Middle East and executing terrible acts. An example is the case of a young man from the south of the Netherlands called Sultan Berzel, who joined Islamic State and committed a suicide attack in Baghdad, in Iraq, killing 23 people. With this act, he made himself the biggest Dutch mass murderer since World War II. Now, these Salafi mosques preach an unadulterated Salafi message that rejects democracy, promotes Sharia, gives women very limited space, and rejects homosexuality. There is always a lot to do about aggressively operating Salafists in the Netherlands, and there is regular fuss about the way they attack other Muslims and about the very undemocratic forms of education they offer their youth. Attempts by the Dutch government to stop foreign money flowing from Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states to these institutions have so far failed. Salafists generally have little interest in a political career. They are very self-reliant and reject mainstream society. So this is of course, this stream of Islam is also provoking the reactions of the populists. Of course, the populists will label all Muslims like Salafi or fundamentalist, etc. Geert Wilders, for example, says not all, let's say, moderate Muslims are aware of the fact what the real Islam is, because the real Islam is jihadi and aggressive, etc. So the populists, and they're quite successful in that, in labeling all Muslims as potentially dangerous against democracy. Well, at the same time, in the Netherlands, I have no idea of course, to what extent you know the Netherlands, but maybe you have heard of the city of Rotterdam, one of the biggest ports in the world, and the mayor of Rotterdam is from a Moroccan Muslim background, Ahmed Abu Talib. So we have Muslims on all kinds of positions in our country, and functioning perfectly in the system. Maybe go to the next slide. Yeah. Well, anyway, I mentioned these two populist parties in the Netherlands. But for your information, next week we'll have another round of parliamentary elections next Wednesday, 22nd of November, and of course they are also participating in the elections. So Geert Wilders is relatively doing well in the polls, but Mr. Baudet is doing bad. But undoubtedly they'll stay in parliament. Maybe to the next slide. Yeah, well, this is another quote from the PVV, but basically this is what I already mentioned at the beginning. Maybe more interesting is the quote of Mr. Baudet of Forum for Democracy, who spoke about, and I'm quoting, but I'm just reading here on the slide, you can read with me, this uncontrolled immigration that distorts our streets, where he undoubtedly referred to reprehensible expressions of Islam, such as mosques with minarets, men with beards, and women with headscarves, niqab and burqa. Early, Mr. Baudet talked about the homeopathic delusion of Europe, as was mentioned above, which he never really explained. Commenters interpreted this statement as Mr. Baudet protesting against the mixing of races in Europe. These are, you know, Baudet is more implicit. Let's say Geert Wilders, you know, Geert Wilders is a populist and he hates Islam, clear. But Mr. Baudet is more implicit, and I think that for that reason that he is more dangerous when it comes to democracy than Mr. Wilders. Maybe the next slide. Oh, yeah, the Dutch Constitution, we treated that, yeah. Well, I'm getting a bit to the end of my paper now because, well, I gave you some some background information on on the state of the art of populism. I hope a bit in Europe and focusing on the Netherlands. I gave you some quotes. There is lots of things to say on it, but maybe I'm just reading now my my conclusion. How much time do I still have, Mr. President?
You still have 11 minutes.
11 minutes, that's more than enough. Okay. So, are the European democracies, the Netherlands in particular, strong enough to withstand the forces of populism in a democratic way? Or will they fall back in violence and totalitarianism? Well, if you look at the global context, we see, of course, also the presence of strong populist leaders like US ex-president Donald Trump, Brazilian ex-president Jair Bolsonaro, and present Indian president Narendra Modi, who each in his own way all have their nationalistic, populist, alt-right agendas. The influence these leaders have on public opinion and mainstream political parties must not be underestimated, as extreme right forces feel stimulated to come out of their holes and try to impose their political views on regular political parties. Analysts and researchers observe a growing influence of alt-right or populist thinking on mainstream establishment political parties. That's really an important point. So the populists, they continuously flood us with opinions and ideas, populist ideas, and then these ideas gradually filter into mainstream political parties. I'll give you some example of that. Research shows that leaders of mainstream political parties in Europe express themselves on Muslims, migrants, and multiculturalism in ways that would not have been politically and socially possible in the 70s and 80s of the last century. Wasn't it German Chancellor Merkel, Angela Merkel, who in 2010 declared multiculturalism has failed? Or our own Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte, who told Turkish rioters in Rotterdam to fuck up to their country. That's literally what he said in Dutch there. If respected leaders of leading nations utter themselves in these ways, it doesn't surprise that the people regard this as a justification to imitate them. It is the growing influence of the populist discourse that is behind this, as the studies claim. At the same time, we see that fundamentalist Islam, and maybe that's the next slide, I think, is strongly promoted by powerful nations like Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states. Even though Crown Prince Salman bin Mohammed declares to strive after more openness and liberty in his country, the fact is that Saudi Arabia remains autocratic and totally undemocratic, supporting the Wahhabi Salafi variety of Islam everywhere in the world. The influence of Salafi Islam is growing in Europe, including the Netherlands, I mentioned it. And for this reason, it triggers the reactions of populist parties which may strongly state that they may appreciate the common Muslim, while using at the same time the argument that these fundamentalist forms of Islam are dangerous to democracy as a pretext to regard Muslims as one homogeneous community that basically endangers and destabilizes society. If we look at the behavior of populist parties, we find that they conform to the rules of democracy, the ones that I mentioned, and even claim to be the best representatives of the people. The latter statement is, though, rather gratuitous because most of the populist parties discussed in this chapter do not hold any actual political power. And mind you, they're all in opposition. They're all in opposition. They are not part of the government. But, as I said earlier, this does not apply to the Fidesz party in Hungary. And, of course, also the administration of ex-President Trump. They were openly populist. We see in the former case that democracy in Hungary is increasingly being eroded, and Trump's rule ended with his supporters storming the capital in January 2021. These events are terrifying and cause great concern about the fragile democracies in which populist parties thrive. Populist parties often obtain between 10 and 25% of the vote in elections, making them a fearful political force. We see that these parties have not ceased spreading their propaganda and visions, and we see that the anti-Islamic discourse is trickling down to mainstream political parties and rulers in Europe. Nevertheless, democracy cannot be simply and quickly be destroyed. Germany's example in 1933 was also an exception in that sense, because Hitler's NSDAP was supported by armed militias, like the SS and SA, so these were armed groups, which made it easier to seize power. There are no such militias in today. The populist parties do not have militias in France and Germany and the Netherlands, so that makes quite a difference, of course. Still, we see that populist ideas are spreading rapidly on the internet through social media. More people than ever live in their own internet bubble and only follow the news that they like. As a Dutch public intellectual, Bas Heijnen, convincingly demonstrated in his essay. He says in his essay, everybody is in its own bubble. Undoubtedly, you will recognize that also as well in Indonesia, that certain groups, they only look at certain, let's say, accounts, certain YouTube channels, certain Facebook groups, and they are constantly confirmed in their bubble, like their ideas, and they do not, let's say, have a look at other bubbles and what are the other people really thinking or not. So that's also the internet. The idea of the internet was originally we get to know each other. True, that's also true, certainly. But at the same time, we see the internet is also growing in numerous bubbles, and everybody being in his own vacuum, in his own and getting confirmation all the time about his or her ideas. Anyway, so in that sense, you might say that the present social media on internet are the SS and SA of our time. Well, that's quite a statement, I admit, but anyway, sometimes you have to challenge things a bit. The erosion of democracy is progressing. Hungary remains a striking example. I mentioned this earlier. We see similar movements in Poland, although recently the populist party lost more or less the elections. So that's a good development. Let me just check my last words. Assessing the situation in the Netherlands alone does not, of course, make sense much. That's not that much sense, because without also considering the European and broader Western context. After all, the Netherlands is a small country and a small player on the world stage, and what happens outside the Netherlands always has had a lot of influence on the country, which its powerful neighbors as we have as France to the south, Germany to the east, and the United Kingdom to the west. Populism has a powerful presence in Europe and the Western world. Populist parties have been able to access governments in Austria and today as well in Italy. The Austrian government is gone again, and the United States. Democracy was apparently strong enough to resist this move. Nevertheless, we note that the silent and less silent populist influence on public opinion and political statements of leaders in Europe appears to be increasing. Not every populist movement has to lead to the downfall of democracy. Of course not. And Lefort has not said that every threat will necessarily lead to the degeneration of a democracy into a dictatorship. We have seen this also in the United States, of course, where Biden won the elections. So the populist administration of Trump lost the elections. We see a similar movement, similar development recently in Poland, as I mentioned, where the governing PiS party has lost. Well, it became the biggest party, but it's not unable to form a government. Also, we see that in the latest Spanish elections, the ideas were that the polls said that the Vox movement, that's also a populist party in Spain, would make a major gain, but that turned out not to be the case. And now, in Spain, let's say a center-right government, forming a center-right government is not possible. And so democracy has its vigor, its strength, certainly, but, and that's of course, and I think I completely agree with Lefort here, totalitarianism, the danger of totalitarianism is always in the core of democracy, and we have to take care of that and follow it closely. That's it. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm very curious. Well, as you show what the future brings, I think Allahu Alam, isn't that so? God knows not best, and I'm very curious after your questions. Thank you.
Round of applause, everybody. Thank you so much for your presentation, Dr. Jaap de Ruiter. So I would like to give a little conclusion on this presentation. So Dr. de Ruiter explained that there are various challenges towards democracy, and he already presented a lot of study cases in Europe from various countries, not only the Netherlands, but also Germany, France, and also Middle Eastern countries as well. And totalitarianism is always a danger, and populist parties, well, they utilize rhetorics and also propaganda to gain followers, especially in elections. Dr. de Ruiter mentioned that next week there will be an election in the Netherlands. Yes. Populist parties will use this moment to gain support through propaganda. And however, the use of anti-Muslim or maybe anti-minority identity narrative will, yes, in one way gain more support for the political interests of the party, of the populist party, but unfortunately it will also erode democracy, and there will be some problems inside the democratic system in which, as you have mentioned, the French philosopher, what was his name?
Lefort.
Lefort, yeah. The French philosopher Claude Lefort actually mentioned that the idea of democracy is supposed to be diverse and it's supposed to welcome various peoples and cultures. Meanwhile, these populist parties, they try to give a counter narrative to what's going on for their own political interests. However, Dr. de Ruiter also explained that not all populism is against democracy, because even with the existence of populist parties, we can still see other oppositions winning the election, such as Trump lost to Biden. Okay, so thank you very much for your presentation. My name is Lutfi, by the way. I'm the one.
Nice to meet you, Lutfi.
Yes, I'm the one you contact in WhatsApp. Okay, and we would like to open the question and answer session. If you guys have any questions, yes, you can raise your hand if you are in the auditorium, and if you are in the Zoom meeting, you can raise your hand, and you can also type your comments in the chat box. But before the Q&A, I personally have a question to Dr. de Ruiter. Is that okay?
Please.
Yes, I'm interested in, is there any political party in the Netherlands which is, politically striving for Muslim interests and other minority interests as well in the parliament? Yes, in the Netherlands.
That's an interesting question. And the answer is yes. I think some 6 years ago, there were two members of the Labour Party who split from the Labour Party due to all kinds of other issues. And they established a party which is called Denk. Basically, the two members of the two former MPs of this Labour Party were from a Turkish background. And they had an issue with their party leadership, but that goes too far from here. Anyway, they present themselves in parliament as a party. Well, they present themselves as let's say, an all-inclusive party, but they especially represent, let's say, the Muslim population in the Netherlands. And in the last elections, they gained 3 seats. The parliament has 150 seats, and they have 3 of them. And they were very quite active in combating Islamophobia, in fighting for equal rights of Muslim community in the Netherlands, and in the polls. Because, as I said, next week there is another election, parliamentary election, and they're doing well. I think they will have another 3 seats like that. It's a small party, but they are quite active. Yeah. So it's also in parliament. Imagine, so we have the populists in the parliament, and then there is the Denk party, and well, you can understand that the debate between them is something quite sometimes very, very fierce. Yeah.
Thank you so much for the answer. So yes, the Netherlands also welcome all-inclusive parties as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, sure. Well, all parties will say when asked, of course, we are all inclusive. Even the populist party will say we have nothing against Muslims, etc. But in fact, of course, they do.
Thank you so much.
Lip service to diversity. Sorry.
Okay, everybody. Do you have any questions? It's the Q&A session. Okay, we have okay, which one's first?
This one.
Oh, okay, just okay. We have a question from Suli Indra Dewi from Unitri.
Thank you. Hi, Jan. Thank you very much for sharing. I want to ask, this is based on my experience also, because I used to live 1 year in Holland, and so I feel, you know, the tense when I was there. There was like a little bit conflict between, yeah, the religion conflicts like that, like the burning of the mosque or the Islamic school, the church. I experienced that also when I was there. But my question is, how what you explain, it's on the elite levels, yeah, the political elite levels. But how about actually the grassroots levels, like the common people? Because what I experience, people there live in, you know, it's just fine. I mean, like they see Muslim or Islam, it's just like common. We can mingle, we can socialize well without any problems. That's the first one. And the second, I also noticed that because there are so many Islam communities in Netherlands, each of the community also not getting along each other. I mean, like there is a stigma between, like when you are from Morocco, for instance, you will have a stigma to those who are from Muslim from Turkey, for instance, things like that. So how is the political elites especially seeing that between the Muslim people also there's a stigma around them, and that makes the image of Islam will be different in every perspective, or people will see it differently. So I think basically that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your question. When were you in the Netherlands? In what period?
It was a long time ago, 2004 to 2005. So it was like a long time ago.
Yeah, well, 20 years ago. Okay, yeah. Well, that's really a very good question, because of course I gave a kind of a political analysis in my paper. And I can imagine that when people there are listening to it, they say, oh my God, what's happening in those countries? It's really it's terrible what's happening. But I can tell you, on Saturday afternoon, when I'm sitting here in my garden, I can hear the azan, the call to prayer from the big mosque here in the city. And so, I mean, this also happens. And I think you have a good point here. The 1 million Muslims in the Netherlands are living relatively well. I mean, of course there is discrimination. Of course, when somebody applies for a job with a Turkish or Moroccan name, it is known that he has to struggle more to get into the position. But it is not as bad, for example, as the situation in the banlieue, in the quarters, the big quarters of the cities in France, where there is much more discrimination and hatred and violence. That's not the case here in the Netherlands. So in general, I always make this little joke. You know that I'm an Arabist. I speak Arabic. I studied it. And when I'm going to my hairdresser here in the street, he is from Iraq. So I speak Arabic with him. Then I go to the supermarket, and there is this little guy, Mohammed. He's Moroccan. He talks about me, about the Quran all the time in Arabic. Then I'm going to the drugstore to buy something, and he's from Egypt. So then I speak Egyptian. What I want to say, so that you have a point here that most of the Muslims feel relatively well integrated here in the Netherlands. That's true. Another thing what you mentioned is you talk about stigma. When it comes to the Muslim community, is very diverse. Most of them are from a Turkish or Moroccan background, but you also have, well, there's also people from the Moluccans in Indonesia with a Muslim background. And it's true that you have mosques where most Moroccans go, and other mosques are really for the Turks and the Sudanese, etc. But you can also label that diversity. You can also say, yeah, there is this ethnic division. Is there hatred between those groups? No, no. This is just an ethnic issue. Diversity. Maybe it's the same in Indonesia. I have no idea, of course. So I think your question is really, in that sense, very important to state as well that what happens here on grassroots level is not as bad as on this high political level. Thank you for your question.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Suli, for your question. Do you have another question from the from the hall? Can you turn the camera to the question?
Good morning, Netherlands, Linan Jia. Such interesting topic, actually. My name is Nadia Devina. In my second year, and I'm international relations student. I would like to ask that, is there any international organization, whether it's in regional organization or some kind of like non-governmental organization that has already contributed that making Islam more acceptable and familiar by its positive perspective, of course, outside the Netherlands. And if there are any, how the government of the Netherlands action or reaction about it? Yeah. Pretty curious about that.
Yeah, I get your point. So your question is there something like a representative body, NGO in the Netherlands representing the Muslim community in the country, also as a channel to discuss issues with the government? That's how I interpret your question. And the answer is no. In that sense, that there are many NGOs, there are too many of them, I would say. And so there are different non-governmental Muslim organizations in the Netherlands representing Turks, Moroccans. I think, yeah, there are too many of them, and that's really also an issue because, you know, in times of tension, of maybe now as well, you know, with the war going on in Gaza, it would be good if there would be one body, Muslim body, to discuss issues that are just going on in society with the government, and that's not the case. You know, in Belgium, for example, in Belgium there is such a representative body, but this was imposed by the Belgian government. The Belgian government has said to the Muslim community, okay, organize yourself and form a body, an association, a representation of all Muslims in Belgium. There are also elections for this body in Belgium. But the fact that it is imposed by the government in Belgium makes it unpopular. So the Muslims, let's say the average Muslim in Belgium, does not recognize this body. So this is really an issue. First, you can ask the question, is it really necessary for Muslims to represent themselves in one body? Because they are so diverse. There are so many of them, many groups, many interests. Does that work? And if you impose it from the government, say, you organize yourself so that we as a government has this, we have this channel with you, then the problem is the question if the let's say the Muslims in the street recognizes it. So this is the issue here in the Netherlands. From my perspective, it's not really such a big deal. I mean, we have the Muslim community, 1 million people, around 1 million. It's very diverse. That's normal. You cannot expect that there is something like the Muslim community. There is so many variety in it, in diversity. So it's like a normal society. And so in my view, it would, I do not see it as a big obstacle that there is not such a thing. And it functions, you know, like the philosopher Lefort says, democracy is always in crisis. There is always something. There is always an issue, and we negotiate things, etc. But as long as all of us abide to the rules, we always find a compromise. And that's also how I see it with the Muslim community in the Netherlands. It is diverse, they quarrel among each other, and that's normal. And as long as we quarrel within the democratic space, then I think nothing is wrong. I hope this is an answer to your question. And if you want more to know more about Muslim representation in the Netherlands, you can contact me. I'm everywhere online. You will find me.
That is suitable and enough for me. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Nadia, for your question. Do we have another one? Okay, from the hall, can you come to the front, please?
Assalamualaikum, Mr. De Ruiter. My name is FISIP. I'm a student of International Relations in UINSA Ampel, Surabaya. So, Mr. De Ruiter, if we look back at the history, there are some countries in the world that tend to be authoritarian when they lead by the populist parties, such as Nazi under the leadership of like German under the leadership of Nazi, and Indian under the leadership of President Narendra Modi. So my question is, based on your opinion, is populism a threat to democracy? And if populism is a threat to democracy, is it possible for a democratic country to ban the populist parties? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your question. Yeah, it relates, of course, very much to what I have said in my presentation. I labeled indeed Mr. Modi from India as populist. That does not still say that he is also an autocrat, because this is really you're touching here on a very sensitive point. Populism rises in the bosom of democracy. We have seen that, all those political parties. Everybody has the right to establish a political party. And as long as you say to the outside world, you know, we obey to the rules of democracy, you're accepted. But maybe we are looking here at wolves in the clothes of sheep, as we say. And that at a certain point they show their real face, and those sheep turn out to be wolves. So and I think your question relates then to, because you're you're asking, should we ban political parties? If you want to ban a political party, and then there is, of course, there are laws for that, and then you have to show convincingly that a political party is a danger to democracy. Now, if you have a political party like the populist party, let's say like the Dutch Party for Freedom, where they say we want an Islam-less Netherlands, we want a Netherlands without Islam. Is somebody allowed to have such an opinion? In democracy, the answer is yes. You can have that opinion. You can say, yes, I want a country without Islam, because that's the freedom of expression. Okay. Can you put it in your political program? Yes, you can. Of course, you can. Because it is still words. Okay. Can you participate in elections? Yes, you can. So when do we cross the border of the law? When can we say, but now you're going to fight? I'll give you maybe an example helps you in this, because it's a really interesting question. The leader of the Dutch Party for Freedom that I discussed, Geert Wilders, at a certain point said, some 8 years ago, I think, there were elections, municipal elections, and then he said, so he was in a room with his party and his supporters, and he said at a certain point that evening, do you want a country without Moroccans? Do you want a country without Moroccans? And of course, the crowd cheered, yes, 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 we want less Moroccans, less Moroccans, less Moroccans. And then he said, okay, we're going to arrange that. And for that, he was called to go to court. He was a court case came, and he was convicted. So here he let's say he crossed the line from words to action, because he was calling up to hatred to, in this case, the Moroccan community. So, you know, there is also an advantage of those political parties, the populist party, because we know their party programs, we know what's in it when they say we want a Germany without Muslims, or we want a France without Muslims. That basically, of course, goes against the constitution of all of those countries. But once they really are going to act on it, then they have a problem, because then they are confronted with courts and justice. So we should not also be too negative and pessimistic about the power and resilience of democracy, because democracy is powerful as well. We have seen it also in the United States, when we had 4 years of Trump, and in the end he lost the elections. Of course, he never admitted it, but that's not the case. And now he finds himself in all those court cases. So democracy has totalitarianism in its bosom, but that does not mean it is completely weak and with one blow it's gone. So I hope this is a bit of an answer to your question.
Thank you very much for your answer. That's the answer your question. Thank you. Okay, it's interesting because, as you mentioned, for political parties to be banned in the government democracy system, it has to expose that their existence is a threat to democracy. And actually, in Indonesia, we do have several organizations and parties which were banned. You've heard of the Communist Party of Indonesia, and also, in your words, fundamentalist organizations such as Hizbut Tahrir and also Jamaah Islamiyah. And you know, some of these organizations are actually banned in Indonesia because just like what you said, when the rhetoric turns into action, they have to deal with the law, and they got arrested, and after that, their organizations became banned after exposing the threat to democracy. So even in Indonesia, this applies also. And what Dr. De Ruiter said, that yes, totalitarianism and yes, totalitarianism exists inside democracy, but it's quite weak, and it becomes you know, less influential as society can understand their ideas, because in political parties everything is exposed. You know, the vision and missions of the candidates, and also you can report it also to the court if there is some threat to democracy. Okay, everybody, is there any other questions? We still have around 20 minutes perhaps for the question and answer session. So, okay, another question from the hall. Can you please stand up and grab the mic, please, and the camera facing that way?
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi
Hello there, Mr. Jan. I'm kind of interesting about the sentence in your name that say digital science. So I would like to ask about, is that any role the media play in shaping public perception of Muslim communities in the Netherlands itself? Because right now, today, a lot of things can be happen actually when higher authority can also use media as their tools to share or shaping the perception of the community itself. Thank you.
Can you maybe repeat the question? I did not really get it.
Okay. So what role has the media played in shaping public perception of Muslim communities in Netherlands? Because contemporary, a lot of things can be happen in media, and higher authority also can use media as a tool
to share or to shape a lot of perception towards community itself. Thank you.
I get it. Yeah. Yeah, thank you for your question. I mentioned at the end of my presentation, I made a comparison between the media, social media, internet media, with the militias of the Hitler militias, the SA and SS in the 30s and 40s. I think maybe that was a bit going too far, but it is an undeniable fact that a war is taking place on the internet, in the media. Everybody knows that, also you in Indonesia, of course. When you look at Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, X or whatever, it's constantly there. And all political parties, of course, make use of the media to spread the message. As I said, and also governments, of course. Yeah, everybody is, of course, promoting his or her views online, and trying to convince the others and trying to blame the others, etc. The most worrying thing I find, and that's also what I already mentioned, maybe I should have stressed more the role of media in this whole issue, because there is lots of things going on in media. Although I must say, I don't know what the case is in Indonesia, but I notice that also with my students in Tilburg University, that they are less present in media than, let's say, 5 or 10 years ago. There is a kind of fatigue, a bit like, yeah, Facebook, no, not Facebook again. Maybe Instagram is now more popular, maybe also in your country, I don't know. But I get the impression that people get a bit tired of these enormous, let's say, presence of media. The most worrying thing I find is what I mentioned also in my presentation, is the bubble, right? So that everybody is in its own bubble. I'm still completely fascinated by the fact that that's an important part of American population still believes that the elections were stolen from Trump, and that he is completely, it's completely unjustified, the cases against him. And that is because they are in those bubbles. And the whole idea of the internet in the 90s was, I think, well, we get to know each other, and we become a big world community, global community. It seems to be the opposite the case, that we all are in our own bubbles. And that's really dangerous. I mentioned a bit in between at the end of my presentation that the Dutch philosopher Bas Heijnen said he wrote a little pamphlet. He said, what's going on in our democracy? The idea of democracy is that we continuously talk to each other, discuss things with each other. We have different opinions, but we try to reach the hands to each other and to find compromises, etc. But if we stay, all of us, in our bubbles, and we do not reach out anymore, then democracy stops to function. And that's, I think, also quite a big danger for democracy, because the idea is we constantly stay in touch with each other. And if there is no communication anymore, that's also kind of a threat to democracy. So also your question is a very valuable one. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. De Ruiter, for your answer. Tirta, does it answer your question? Or you have something to respond? Okay, thank you. Is there any other questions? Okay, we have another question in the hall.
Okay, good morning, Dr. Jia. Hope you are fine and healthy. Well, my name is Ajeng. Well, I have a question. It's not a question, but maybe I need your perception in here. You know that Indonesia is one of the countries that really have support for the Palestine. So, what do you think as a scientist, yeah, to look about your country and in Netherlands, how the state responds the Palestine, and what do you think? Thank you.
Whoa. Well, that's a sensitive question you're asking here. Well, anyway, I can give it a shot. So your question is about the current Hamas-Israel conflict. Yeah, that's your question about, yeah. And as you know, the Netherlands, of course, are well part of the Western world. And it has formally, the Netherlands has the Dutch government has supported the idea that Israel has the right to defend itself and to retaliate. At the same time, of course, well, what we see everywhere in the world is that the Netherlands also, let's say, continuously shows its concern for the safety and the health and of the Palestinian people, because it's quite clear that they have to pay an enormous price for this for in this conflict. That's clear from everything. It's really a sensitive matter because, you know, when it comes to, I think you should make a distinction between the Palestinian people in Gaza and the Hamas movement, because I find the Hamas movement myself as well quite cynical. When it is true, if it is true that they have those headquarters under hospitals, etc., and they know, of course, hospitals are very vulnerable places, and when they claim like, okay, if we leave, if we lose people, if people die, they die for the good cause. I don't know if you are following the news on Al Jazeera. I don't know if you know Arabic or not. But when you read when I'm reading, of course, I'm following the news also on Al Jazeera, and Al Jazeera all the time says that, uses the word shuhada for the people who are killed on the Palestinian side, so martyrs. And when it comes to the people who died on the Israeli side, it's kutla, the people who are dead. But in my view, they're all victims. They're all dead. If you are kutla or shuhada, you're lost, you're gone. And here is quite some cynicism in Hamas, I find it. I find it really very cynical action that they have executed. Also, the use of the word genocide. All the time they say Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. But you know, genocide is deliberately killing everybody. And if there is one organization that wants to commit a genocide, it is Hamas, because it showed, it says also in its text that it wants to eliminate the state of Israel. And it showed its face when entering the kibbutzim and killing children, etc. Of course, I can end this expose with saying there in a war there are always people, all of us are losing. But in these little remarks that I'm making, it's quite clear that this is a really complex situation. And the cliche is, of course, that violence leads to nothing, etc., but that doesn't help these days. So, well, but anyway, dear students, this, of course, is a subject for a separate conference, but maybe later after the war is over. Thank you for your question.
Thank you so much for your answer. Mrs. Ajeng, do you have any comments? No? Okay.
No, not for the moment. It's a sensitive issue.
And maybe we can invite Dr. Ruiter to Indonesia. Okay.
I'll be happy to come.
And we have another question in the chat box. Thank you for your inspiring presentation. This is from Ms. Rida Amalia. Okay, so 2 questions. Number 1, in your perspective as of today, how intense are the movements and their demands? Could I assume that the movements are elitist agenda that are community a community one? And the second question is, how have the Muslim communities responded to the movements? Maybe what she meant is the populist movements.
Yeah, sure.
influence the relationship between the Muslim and majority communities in the Netherlands? Should the Muslims anticipate or simply ignore it?
These are really also very very effective questions. So the first question is, because it is here in the chat, how intense are the movements? Well, these populist movements are quite intense. I think I've shown that. They're quite stable as well. Also here in the Netherlands, this populist party get all the time between 50 and 20% of the votes, which is a lot. And that is already the case for 20 years. So they are strong. I don't think it is an elitist agenda. Let's say the supporters of those populist parties here, and speaking of the Netherlands, but also in France, it is really well, let's say maybe put it like this, people, let's say the original Dutch people, indigenous people who have been living in the quarters of town which are socio-economically quite poor, and all Muslim communities is also settled in those quarters. So they were more or less forced to live with Muslim. Suddenly they had Muslim neighbors and Muslim and mosques around them. So let's say the ordinary people were confronted with this new Islamic presence. And they're absolutely not elitists. So they're more or less the laborers of the old time. This is also an issue that has been discussed also in the debate here in the Netherlands, that's let's say that the more richer people who live in the nicer neighborhoods, they do not have those daily concern with dealing with completely different cultures. This is really taking place in the socio-economic weaker parts of the cities. So no, not elitist at all, I would say. Another thing, that the second question is really also interesting, because basically it is how do Muslim communities react and how should they? In general, well, in the beginning, when populist parties rose, especially this one of Geert Wilders, Muslim communities reacted fiercely. They protested against everything he said, forbidding the Quran or closing down mosques, etc. That's what he suggested to do. Later on, there came a period of that they didn't react anymore. They ignored it. They said, "Oh, there he is again with his ideas and his propositions, and let's ignore him because he's not interested in listening to us." That's also true. This Geert Wilders, he will never go into debate with, in this case, Muslim leaders. They invited him to discuss things. He always refuses. Same for Thierry Baudet. So that means already that they are not really representing the people. Because if you really represent people, you're interested to discuss anything with everybody. More recently, I noticed that there is more of kind of a split. Like many Muslims who think, I'm living my life. It is as it is. And there is economic crisis. We have had Corona and the daily struggle, and there is more of an activist part of the Muslim community, like in the political party DENK, that really reacts to, and I think that's the wisest thing. I think reacting to the ideas, how reprehensible they can be, but reacting to them, that helps. So that is also what this Dutch philosopher said: we should get out of our bubble and confront each other with these ideas. So the answer to the second question is, most Muslims are just occupied with their daily life, and some of them, especially the activists among them in this political party, no, they confront the populists with counter arguments. Yeah. Is this an answer to your question, Rida?
Thank you so much for your answer. Oh yes, thank you, Professor. Yes.
He said, yeah.
Do you have more questions? We have approximately 7 minutes before the end of the session. Any other questions from the hall, or you can type in the chat box, or you can raise your hand. It's interesting that from Dr. De Ruiter's answers, we see the trend of today's society, both in the social media and also in daily life. There are part of the communities who just face their daily struggle. The same way in social media, they just follow what they like and they don't really have much concern about the current social issues. And there is also another group of people who are activists trying to represent a larger group of people and identities. And so the societies are diverse. Societies are diverse in this regard. Any last questions, perhaps, from the audience?
Maybe I have a question.
Okay, thank you.
Is there also something like a populist movement in Indonesia?
Populist movement in Indonesia. Maybe since I'm from international relations, I'm not really an expert. We have our Ph.D, Mrs. Ani. Can you answer the question? Because she's also a political researcher. Okay, can you give the mic to Bu Ani, please?
I'm not seeing you anymore, by the way. I'm not seeing you anymore.
Okay. Yes, Mrs. Ani.
Yeah, there you are. Yeah.
Answer Dr. De Ruiter's question. Is there any populist movements in Indonesia?
Yes, I try to answer, but usually my topic research is not about political party, but yes, we have. We also have a populist party, but the best thing in 2024 election, maybe populism is not very it's not strong. It's not strong compared with in 2019. In 2019, we have presidential election. One is propaganda of populism, and one is nationalism. But now the propaganda is very low, because the candidate who has image in populism in 2019. Now apa namanya, bersatu dengan united with nationalism. Yeah, one of a candidate is Prabowo. In 2019, he is represent of populism, but now he unite with Gibran. Gibran is the son of Jokowi, so it is nationalism.
Nationalism, yeah, it's closely related to a certain extent. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Maybe ini menggambarkan apa?
It describes it.
It is described that in Indonesia, nationalism and populism it's not very quiet like in Europe. They have any issues, strong issues, strong issue based like your presentation, like you mentioned. We have Islamic fundamentalists, but it's not strong now because government banned many Islamic organization and they catch some terrorists and go to jail. Something like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I hope that answered your question. Thank you very much, Bu Ani. It seems like I can conclude that in Indonesia, yes, the political parties are ideological based, but it's not as strong as the ones in Europe because coalition, party coalition and group interest is much stronger in Indonesian political parties than their ideologies. So even parties with conflicting ideologies, if they think by uniting the candidate of president and also candidate of vice president, if they think by uniting parties with opposing ideologies can gain more votes, then they will do that. So in Indonesia, like party interest is much stronger than their ideology. Okay, so thank you so much for your time, Dr. De Ruiter, and it's still morning there. Round of applause, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
We would like to present a certificate to Dr. De Ruiter, and
Really?
we'll also send you the soft file soon.
Oh.
So we present this certificate to Dr. Jaap de Ruiter as our speaker today.
Wow. Are you going to send it to me? It's a PDF.
Oh, okay. Yes, we'll let our operator send it soon.
I'll make a picture of it. That's really nice. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I can show it to my boss that I was really in the conference.
Okay, yes. Okay, thank you so much for your time. I hope you're doing well, and hopefully we can meet again in another time, perhaps if we come to the Netherlands, or you can.
You're welcome. You're very much welcome. Let me know. We organize something.
Hereby, I end the session. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
It's for those who are still in the Zoom meeting, please turn on your camera because we will capture the moment and give your best smile. Okay. Okay, are you ready to take the picture?
Well, we did, sir. Okay, here we go.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, cheers.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Finish?
Finish.
Yes. Thank you so much, everybody. We'll return it to the MC.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, let's give a lively applause for our speaker, moderator, and all of us. Dear all participants, we would like to remind you to fill out the attendance form for today. The link of the attendance form is available on the chat box of the Zoom meeting. Please fill in attendance for today and tomorrow's session to receive the certificate of participation. Thank you.
Dear Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, thus the series of plenary and parallel sessions for day 1 of SAICOPSS 2023 have ended. Make sure that you're keeping up with us by following our official Instagram at FISIP UINSA and SAICOPSS with SS.
The organizing committee would like to thank you for your presence and apologize if there are any shortcomings in the implementation of this event.
See you tomorrow for the second day of SAICOPSS 2023. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
SAICOPSS 2021 held by the Faculty of Social and Political Sciences.
For me,
Welcome to the second Sunan Ampel International Conference of Tropical Social Science 2000.
Kind of the conference is kind of